Honorable Minister has arrived. Everybody is requested to please settle down. आज के हमारे मुख्य अतिथि पधार चुके हैं, उनका तालियों के साथ स्वागत किया जाए। नमस्कार, मैं नमिशा बंसल, डेटा साइंटिस्ट NRIDA, इस GIS कॉन्फ्रेंस में आप सभी अतिथिगणों का हार्दिक अभिनंदन करती हूँ। इस GIS कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से हम रूरल कनेक्टिविटी GIS डेटा को सार्वजनिक करने जा रहे हैं। इस शुभ अवसर पर मैं निवेदन करती हूँ श्री आशीष कुमार गोयल जी, अपर सचिव ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय एवं महानिदेशक NRIDA और अन्य NRIDA अधिकारियों से कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अतिथिगणों को सम्मानित करें। श्री आशीष कुमार गोयल जी, अपर सचिव ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय एवं महानिदेशक NRIDA से अनुरोध है कि वे स्वागत एवं कीनोट संबोधन प्रस्तुत करने के लिए मंच पर पधारें।
सभी महानुभावों का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है, नमस्कार। माननीय ग्रामीण विकास एवं पंचायती राज मंत्री श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी, माननीय राज्य मंत्री श्री फग्गन सिंह कुलस्ते जी, सचिव ग्रामीण विकास श्री नागेंद्र सिन्हा जी, प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी तमिलनाडु रूरल डेवलपमेंट डिपार्टमेंट श्रीमती P अमुदा जी, भारत सरकार एवं विभिन्न राज्यों से पधारे हुए विभिन्न वरिष्ठ अधिकारीगण, ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय के मेरे सभी वरिष्ठ सहयोगी अधिकारीगण, विभिन्न संस्थाओं जैसे NRSC, CDEC, NIC, Gsy3, मैप माई इंडिया, डेटा मीट, गति शक्ति आदि संस्थाओं से पधारे हुए सभी सम्मानित अतिथिगण, मीडिया के सभी सम्मानित बंधुओं, आप सभी का आज की GIS मीट में बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आज हम इस कार्यक्रम के माध्यम से PMGSY के अंतर्गत जो भी GIS का डेटा एकत्रित हुआ है उसको पब्लिक के लिए, देश के लिए खोलने जा रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना जो वर्ष 2000 में प्रारंभ हुई, उसके अंतर्गत लगभग 7 लाख किलोमीटर सड़कें पूरे देश में बनाई जा चुकी हैं। लगभग 1.25 लाख बसावटों को जोड़ा जा चुका है और इसमें लगभग 3.25 करोड़ लाख यानी 2,75,000 करोड़ रुपए की धनराशि खर्च हो चुकी है। भारत के ग्रामीण क्षेत्र के विकास में प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना की बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका है। जगह जगह देश के कोने कोने में जहां भी जाएं तो प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना का लोगो आपको प्रत्येक गांव के रास्ते में स्वागत करते हुए दिखेगा। प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने न केवल ग्रामीण भारत की तस्वीर बदली है, बल्कि किस तरह से क्वालिटी रोड्स का, गुणवत्तापरक रोड्स का निर्माण ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में होता है, उसकी एक मिसाल भी कायम की है। और साथ ही साथ प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना में नई तकनीकों का इस्तेमाल भी बहुत ही व्यापक पैमाने पर हो रहा है। अभी तक 1 लाख किलोमीटर से ज़्यादा ग्रामीण सड़कें नई तकनीक का इस्तेमाल करके सैंक्शन हो चुकी हैं। और मुझे बताते हुए खुशी है कि जो हमारा योजना का PMGSY 3 घटक है लेटेस्ट, जिसमें कुल टारगेट 1.25 लाख किलोमीटर का है, उसमें अभी तक जो हमने सड़कें सैंक्शन की हैं उनमें आधे से अधिक यानी 50% से अधिक सड़कें नई तकनीक का इस्तेमाल करके सैंक्शन की गई हैं। PMGSY के मैनेजमेंट में, उसके प्रबंधन में हम इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी का व्यापक तरीके से प्रयोग करते हैं। हमारा प्रोग्राम MIS है, OMAS, हमारा GIS का प्लेटफॉर्म है जियो सड़क, हमारा प्रोक्योरमेंट का प्लेटफॉर्म है जैपनिक, मेंटेनेंस, रूरल रोड के मेंटेनेंस को हम पूरा ERP सॉल्यूशन जिस पे काम करता है वो है ईमार्ग, और पब्लिक कंप्लेंट्स और फीडबैक मैकेनिज्म है मेरी सड़क। इस तरह से कई सारे हमारे IT एसेट्स हैं जिसके माध्यम से इस पूरी परियोजना का प्रबंधन किया जाता है। GIS का PMGSY में प्रयोग हमारे पार्टनर CDAC के साथ प्रारंभ हुआ है और अब तक हमने बहुत ही व्यापक पैमाने पर बसावटों को, ग्रामीण सुविधाओं को, सड़कों को GIS प्लेटफॉर्म पर मैप किया है, सैटेलाइट इमेजरी के साथ कंफर्म किया है। आज हम 3 पार्टनर्स के साथ MOU करने जा रहे हैं। एक है ISRI, एक है मैप माई इंडिया और एक है डेटा मीट। इन तीनों के साथ हम एक नॉन एक्सक्लूसिव MOU कर रहे हैं और ये हमारा जो डेटा है हम इन 3 संस्थाओं के साथ हम साझा करेंगे, और भी संस्थाएं जो आगे आएंगी उनके साथ भी हम साझा करेंगे। और ये उम्मीद करेंगे कि ये जो संस्थाएं हैं इस डेटा का उपयोग करके इस प्रकार की सर्विस डिलीवरी एप्लीकेशंस डेवलप करेंगे, मार्केट में इस डेटा को लाएंगे, जिससे कि हमारे ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में हमारे स्टार्टअप्स, हमारे NGOs, हमारे यूथ, उद्यमी, एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, सभी लोग इस डेटा को यूज करके नई नई सर्विसेज विकसित कर सकें, अपने बिजनेस एप्लीकेशंस में उसका फायदा उठा सकें, या इस तरह के एप्लीकेशंस बनाएं जिससे कि जनता को फायदा हो। देश में अभी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी ने पहले नेशनल डेटा शेयरिंग एंड एक्सेसिबिलिटी पॉलिसी जारी की थी और उसी के बाद फिर नेशनल जियोस्पेशियल गाइडलाइंस फरवरी 2021 में जारी की हैं। उसी का परिणाम है कि आज हम अपना जो GIS का डेटा है वो पूरे पब्लिक के लिए ओपन कर रहे हैं। मैं उपस्थित सभी महानुभावों का बहुत बहुत इस अवसर पर स्वागत करता हूं और मैं यह भी आज आपके समक्ष बताना चाहूँगा कि हम बहुत ही जल्दी एक हैकाथन लॉन्च कर रहे हैं, जिसमें हम अपेक्षा करेंगे डेटा मीट के साथ कोलैबोरेट करके अपेक्षा करेंगे यूथ से, स्टार्टअप से, स्टूडेंट से, कि इस तरह के विजुअलाइजेशंस बनाएं, इस तरह के एप्स बनाएं जो भारत के काम आ सकें, पॉलिसी रिसर्च में काम आ सकें, सर्विस डिलीवरी में काम आ सकें, जिससे कि हमारे देश की रूरल इकोनॉमी और ओवरऑल इकोनॉमी में बढ़ोतरी हो सके और इस प्रकार के सर्विस एप्लीकेशंस डेवलप हो सकें जो इस डेटा का उपयोग करते हुए बनाए गए हों। तो इस हैकाथन का भी हम बहुत जल्दी ही डेटा मीट के कोलैबोरेशन के साथ लॉन्च करेंगे और उसमें हम आकर्षक पुरस्कार भी रखेंगे। तो मैं इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ अपनी वाणी को विराम देता हूं और मैं इस पर एक GIS फिल्म हमने एक छोटा सा बनाया है जो हमारे पूरे प्रयास को जो है बहुत ही सूक्ष्म तरीके से दर्शाएगा। मैं अपेक्षा करूंगा कि जरा GIS फिल्म को चलाया जाए।
रास्ते सिर्फ रास्ते नहीं होते, ये वो जीवन रेखाएं होती हैं जो खोलती हैं तरक्की और उन्नति के अनगिनत दरवाजे। ये रास्ते सपने देखने का, उन्हें सच कर देने का हौसला देते हैं, ताकत देते हैं। इसलिए पिछले 20 सालों से प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना की मदद से ऐसे कई छोटे छोटे गांव, कई भूले बिसरे कस्बे जोड़े जा चुके हैं उन्नति की पक्की सड़क से। सड़कें बनाना और उसके लिए प्लानिंग करना पेचीदा है। लोग कहाँ रहते हैं, रास्ते सिर्फ रास्ते नहीं होते, ये वो जीवन रेखाएं होती हैं जो खोलती हैं तरक्की और उन्नति के अनगिनत दरवाजे। ये रास्ते सपने देखने का, उन्हें सच कर देने का हौसला देते हैं, ताकत देते हैं। इसलिए पिछले 20 सालों से प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना की मदद से ऐसे कई छोटे छोटे गांव, कई भूले बिसरे कस्बे जोड़े जा चुके हैं उन्नति की पक्की सड़क से। सड़कें बनाना और उसके लिए प्लानिंग करना पेचीदा है। लोग कहाँ रहते हैं और वहाँ क्या क्या सुविधाएं उपलब्ध हैं, इस डेटा के बिना ये काम नहीं हो सकता। हमारे काबिल इंजीनियर्स इस काम को बखूबी निभा रहे हैं। अस्पताल, बाजार और स्कूल जैसे जरूरी आवश्यकताओं तक आसानी से पहुंचा जा सके, इसलिए ये सड़कें बनाई जा रही हैं। ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय ने ग्रामीण सड़कों, ग्रामीण बस्तियों, प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना प्रस्तावों और स्कूलों, अस्पतालों, बाजारों आदि की जानकारी को डिजिटाइज कर दिया है। NRIDA और CDAC की देखरेख में हमारे फील्ड इंजीनियर्स और GIS प्रोफेशनल्स ने बहुत मेहनत से ये सारा डेटा इकट्ठा किया है, जो अब आम जनता के काम आ सकता है और जो बिना किसी शुल्क इस्तेमाल के लिए उपलब्ध है। ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय का प्रयास है कि इस डेटा की मदद से नए उद्योग या स्टार्टअप्स, शिक्षा, सरकार और आम जनता को नए उत्पाद बनाने, सेवाएं प्राप्त करने या पहुंचाने में बेहद आसानी होगी। इस डेटा की मदद से भारत के आखिरी कोने तक वो सेवाएं और सुविधाएं पहुंचाने में मदद मिलेगी। ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय 4 डेटा सेट रिलीज कर रहा है। पहला, 25 लाख किलोमीटर से ज्यादा ग्रामीण रास्ते जो अब मैप्स पर आए नहीं हैं। दूसरा, 10 लाख से ज्यादा ऐसे छोटे छोटे गांव, कस्बे या बस्तियां जो देश के कोने कोने में फैली हुई हैं। तीसरा, 7 लाख से ज्यादा ग्रामीण सुविधाएं जैसे स्कूल, अस्पताल, कृषि बाजार, कोल्ड स्टोरेज, गोदाम, जिनके बारे में ग्राम सड़क योजना की प्लानिंग करते समय पता चला है। चौथा, Pmjs3 के तहत 77,128 किलोमीटर स्वीकृत रोड प्रोजेक्ट्स। ये चारों डेटा सेट्स ये सुनिश्चित करेंगे कि समाज, सरकार और बाजार मिलकर पिछले 20 सालों में बनाई गई 6,90,610 किलोमीटर ग्रामीण सड़कों की क्षमता का ज्यादा से ज्यादा उपयोग करें, जिससे ग्रामीण भारत के 80 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोगों को उन्नति और प्रगति की राह मिले और उनकी जिंदगी में खुशियां खिलखिलाने लगे, हर चेहरे पर मुस्कुराहट उभरे और हर सपना साकार हो।
अब मैं कर्नल एन.के. नाथ, महानिदेशक सीडैक से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे वर्चुअल रूप से अपने विचार व्यक्त करें।
धन्यवाद। पुणे से हम सभी सीडैक के कर्मचारियों की ओर से मैं इस कार्यक्रम में आए हुए सभी गण्यमान्य व्यक्तियों को अपना प्रणाम भेजता हूं और जितने लोग ऑनलाइन जुड़े हुए हैं उनको भी। हमारे लिए बहुत गर्व की बात है कि हम लोग इतने महत्वपूर्ण जो भारत सरकार का मिशन है उसका एक हिस्सा हैं, उसके साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। और ना केवल आज से, प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना के साथ में हम लोग 2 दशक से जुड़े हुए हैं और हमने इस दौरान बहुत सी एप्लीकेशन MIS, GIS में विकसित की हैं। ओमास जो कि ऑनलाइन मॉनिटरिंग एंड मेंटेनेंस एंड अकाउंटिंग सिस्टम है इसका, प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना का। और उसके बाद जियो सड़क जो कि फ्री एंड ओपन सोर्स सिस्टम को यूज करके बनाई गई है, जो कि पूरी तरह से इंडिजिनस GIS डेटा लेयर और सैटेलाइट डेटा सर्विसेज को यूज करती है, जैसे कि इसरो की भुवन, ओपन स्ट्रीट मैप वगैरह वगैरह। और ये सभी उपलब्धियां जो हैं हमारे सरकार की आत्मनिर्भर भारत के जो योजना है उसके बिल्कुल तहत हैं। और हम इस बात को बहुत गर्व महसूस करते हैं कि हम इस आत्मनिर्भरता के पहल में आप लोगों के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं। सीडैक जो है 1988 में जो सीडैक का जन्म हुआ, वो भारत को सुपर कंप्यूटिंग तकनीक में आत्मनिर्भरता की ओर ले जाने के लिए हुआ। और 1991 में हमने भारत का सबसे पहला सुपर कंप्यूटर राष्ट्र को समर्पित किया। और इसके साथ मैं ये कहूँगा कि बाकी और जो पहल हैं भारत सरकार की, उनमें हम बहुत हिस्सा ले रहे हैं और ये एक पहल है जो कि हम आत्मनिर्भरता की ओर बढ़ रहे हैं। इसके लिए हम सभी जितने भी सीडैक के मेंबर्स हैं, वैज्ञानिक हैं, इनको बहुत गर्व है कि आज हम इस मुकाम पे पहुंचे हैं। और आज जो ये डेटा रिलीज होने जा रहा है, ये बहुत ही बड़ी उपलब्धि है, क्योंकि ये कहा जाता है कि डेटा जो ये न्यू ऑयल के मतलब उसकी इतनी वैल्यू है, इतना महत्व है कि वो एक डेटा इज द न्यू ऑयल, सभी लोग कहते हैं। तो डेटा को इस्तेमाल करके बहुत बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धियां हो सकती हैं। और हमने देखा है कि डेटा को इस्तेमाल करके किस तरह से आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, डेटा एनालिटिक्स, इस तरह में इस्तेमाल करके कितने बड़ी बड़ी वैज्ञानिक उपलब्धियां अभी सब जगह हो रही हैं। सो देयरफॉर ये जो प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना का नेशनल GIS है, और ये एक जो हमारी कोलैबोरेशन है बहुत सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स के साथ में, सरकार में और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के साथ, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के साथ, प्राइवेट एजेंसीज और हार्डवेयर सॉफ्टवेयर डेटा प्रोवाइडर्स के साथ में है। और जो वेब GIS एप्लीकेशन है, जियो स्पेशल डेटा एप्लीकेशन है, उनका जो यूटिलाइजेशन है एक इतने छोटे समय में, ये एक बहुत बड़ी राष्ट्रीय उपलब्धि हम कहेंगे मानी जा रही है एज अ जियो स्पेशल मिशन। और ये जो है तभी संभव हुआ है कि हमारी जो टीम्स हैं और बहुत डेडिकेटेड टीम्स हैं, उन लोगों ने साथ मिलकर काम किया है और हमको सरकार की ओर से भरपूर समर्थन मिला है। ये कोई शक नहीं है कि GIS टेक्नोलॉजी जो है ये नेशनल जो सस्टेनेबल रूरल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स हैं, इनके लिए एक बहुत बड़ा काम करेगी। इसके साथ मैं फिर से आप लोगों को सबको बधाई देना चाहता हूं। धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं इसरी इंडिया के प्रतिनिधि से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और समझौता ज्ञापन की प्रक्रिया को पूर्ण करते हुए अपने विचार व्यक्त करें।
पंचायती राज मंत्री श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी, मिनिस्टर ऑफ साध्वी निरंजन ज्योति जी, मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट फॉर कंज्यूमर अफेयर्स, फूड, पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड रूरल डेवलपमेंट, श्री फग्गन सिंह कुलास्ते जी, ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट for Steel and Rural Development, all the dignitaries on the dais, and all colleagues from industry and dignitaries here in the audience. बहुत गर्वान्वित महसूस कर रहे हैं आज एक बड़े इम्पॉर्टेंट डेटा को शेयर करने की जो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट ने एक डिसीजन लिया है, हम उसका हिस्सा बने। ये बहुत अच्छी बात है। ये डेटा, जैसा कि बताया गया फिल्म में, बहुत सारा डेटा कलेक्ट किया गया है और इसका बहुत प्रोजेक्ट्स में इस्तेमाल हो सकता है। एसरी एक कंपनी, इसका 1969 में यूएस में शुरू हुई थी, एनवायरमेंटल सिस्टम्स रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट के नाम से। एसरी इंडिया की स्थापना इंडिया में 1996 में हुई थी और पिछले 25 वर्षों में हमारी संस्था ने बहुत सारे सरकारी और निजी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ GIS की टेक्निक को यूज़ करते हुए कुछ जो बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट प्रॉब्लम्स का सोल्यूशन ढूंढना होता है उसमें काम किया है। हमारी कंपनी ने जो राष्ट्रीय मैपिंग एजेंसीज हैं, जैसे सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया है या जियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया, उसके बाद में जो जैसे वाटर डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, इलेक्ट्रिक यूटिलिटीज़ हैं, फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, नेशनल हाईवे अथॉरिटी और मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर, इन सब डिपार्टमेंट्स के साथ इन सालों में काफ़ी नई नई चीज़ों पे, नए प्रोजेक्ट्स पे काम किया गया है और इससे काफ़ी वैल्यू क्रिएट हुई है। ये जो डेटा खास तौर से हमारे साथ MORD ने शेयर किया है, इस डेटा को हम अपने एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे, जिसका कि नाम है लिविंग एटलस, लिविंग एटलस, जैसा कि नाम से आप समझ सकते हैं कि ये एक लिविंग है, जिसमें कि जीवित है, जिसमें कि डेटा अपडेट होता रहेगा। जैसे जैसे नया डेटा आएगा वो लिविंग एटलस में अपडेट होता रहेगा और इसका पूरा जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है वो इंडिया में एस्टेब्लिश्ड है। और इसका मकसद यही रहा है कि जो भी डेटा अवेलेबल हो वो हम अपने सारे यूज़र्स को अवेलेबल करें, जिससे कि वो अपनी सारी एप्लीकेशंस जो नई नई बना सकते हैं उसमें इस डेटा का इस्तेमाल किया जा सके। जब डेटा को शेयर किया जाता है उसकी वैल्यू बहुत कई गुना बढ़ जाती है, क्योंकि उससे एक ही संस्था इस्तेमाल नहीं करती, उसको बहुत सारे लोग इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं और उससे नए नए एनालिसिस हो सकती है, नई समस्याओं का समाधान करने में मदद मिल सकती है। तो हम एक बार बहुत आभारी हैं मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट के कि हमको ये अवसर प्रदान किया जिससे कि हम इस डेटा को अपने यूज़र्स के साथ शेयर करें। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
थैंक यू सर। सम्मेलन की प्रक्रिया को आगे बढ़ाते हुए अब मैं मैप माई इंडिया के प्रतिनिधि से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और समझौता ज्ञापन की प्रक्रिया को पूर्ण करते हुए अपने विचार व्यक्त करें।
आदरणीय केंद्रीय मंत्री श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी, मिनिस्टर स्टेट श्री साध्वी जी और मंच पे सारे वरिष्ठ अधिकारी और सभी सम्मानित लोग, मैप माई इंडिया की तरफ से मैं अपना आभार प्रकट करना चाहता हूं कि हमें मौका मिला आपके साथ ये MOU साइन करने के लिए। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के आत्मनिर्भर भारत के विजन से हम बहुत प्रेरित हैं उसी आत्मनिर्भर भारत के ही बने हुए हम कंपनी है जो कि 27 साल से भारत का डिजिटल मैपिंग, GIS और लोकेशन बेस्ड सर्विसेज पे काम कर रहे हैं। और जियो स्पेशल गाइडलाइंस जो लास्ट ईयर निकले, उसी से हमें एक स्ट्रेंथ मिला कि हम भारत के पहले जियो स्पेशल प्रोडक्ट एंड प्लेटफॉर्म यूनिकॉर्न कंपनी बन गए पब्लिक लिस्टिंग करके। ये इसीलिए हुआ क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने हमारा सहारा दिया। ये इस गवर्नमेंट का विजनरी अप्रोच है डेटा शेयरिंग का, G2G, G2B जो कि बिजनेस और G2C जो कि कंज्यूमर या सिटीजन तक सारी सुविधाएं लाने की। और मैपमंडिया इसमें पूरी साथ देने की क्षमता भी रखती है और देना चाहती भी है। हमने इंडिजिनस ऐप बनाया है जो कि हर कोई आदमी, चाहे वो किसान हो, मजदूर हो, ड्राइवर हो, शहर में कोई रहता हो, गांव में कोई रहता हो, वो हमारे मैपल्स ऐप में जो कि पूरे मैप्स, नेविगेशन, डायरेक्शंस, रास्ते, जगह बताती है। और हर घर, कुटी, मकान, दुकान, बड़ा बंगला, ऑफिस को एक 6 कैरेक्टर कोड में डिजिटल एड्रेस देती है, मैपल्स पिन। इससे जो डेटा जो गवर्नमेंट शेयर कर रही है उससे नए रास्ते से लोग नेविगेट कर पाएंगे, जो कि हमारा मैपमंडिया का जो प्लेटफॉर्म है वो सारे गाड़ियों में बिल्ट इन जाती है। वो ढूंढ पाएंगे कि हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज़ कहाँ है, बैंकिंग फैसिलिटीज़ कहाँ है। इस साल के इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में हमने मदद की इकोनॉमिक एडवाइज़र के ऑफिस को दिखाने के लिए कि कैसे देश में 2012 से 21 में लुमिनोसिटी, लाइट बढ़ा है, स्पेशली यूपी, बिहार और कई सारे जगह में दिखा रहा है कि क्या डेवलपमेंट हुआ है देश में। वैसे ही हाईवे नेटवर्क कैसे बढ़ा है, वैसे ही बैंकिंग कवरेज कैसे बढ़ा है। इस हमारा जो प्लेटफॉर्म है MGIS, जियो स्पेशल एनालिटिक्स, विजुअलाइजेशन और जियो स्पेशल इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी का, इससे सारे गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स, कई सारे बिजनेसेस और सिटीजन्स को भी फायदा होगा। और जो हम APIs देते हैं उससे जो हमारे युवा हैं, स्टार्टअप्स हैं, डेवलपर्स हैं, उस APIs के थ्रू कई एप्लीकेशंस बना पाएंगे। तो मैपमंडिया के जो मैप्स हैं, मैपल्स का जो ऐप है, मैपल्स पिन जो 6 कैरेक्टर कोड है, APIs और MGIS, ये जब जुड़ जाएगा गवर्नमेंट के इतने वैल्यूएबल डेटा सेट से, तो इससे देश की तो मल्टीप्लिकेशन इफेक्ट होगा जितना बेनिफिट हो सकता है। तो इसके लिए मैं बहुत आभारी हूँ कि आपने हमें मौका दिया और हम आपके साथ जुड़े रहेंगे। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं निवेदन करती हूँ श्री P. अमुधा, प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी रूरल डेवलपमेंट तमिलनाडु से, कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और 2 शब्द कहें।
वणकम। बहुत दूर से तमिलनाडु से आए हैं सर। सर पहले मैं आई लाइक टू कंग्रेचुलेट द मिनिस्ट्री एंड Pmjs टीम फॉर ब्रिंगिंग दिस डेटा इनटू द पब्लिक डोमेन. GIS is very close to my heart for the last 20 years. Maybe our ISRO partner may not know. 2002-03 में ट्वाड बोर्ड तमिलनाडु के साथ ESRI का एक पार्टनरशिप हुआ था and we had developed the state water atlas for Tamil Nadu way back in 2002-03. I was part of the project on the other side. So GIS का जो 20 साल के बाद इससे ESRI के साथ एक पार्टनरशिप हो रहा है और जो पब्लिक डोमेन में डेटा आ रहा है, मैंने सोचा कि पर्सनली जाके कंग्रेचुलेट करें people who have made this possible. That's the reason why I am personally here from more than 2,000 kilometers away from Tamil Nadu. और हमारा जो मंत्रालय है, this has taken the lead. Government has been collecting data and data is available with everybody but never used. Now is the first time we realize the value of data in government. And we are trying to put, the last 5-6 years, we are trying to see the data which is available with us, is available to everybody to have a planning. the government, the consumers, and the people in the business utilize this data to make citizens' life much easier and better. Sir, I would like to say that this is a golden opportunity for us in the states to use this data for decision making. Where should we put our facility? Where road connectivity is there? Which is the place which we can go in for our Gati Shakti projects? Prime Minister wants us to have Gati Shakti project for pooling in all the resources so that the efforts will multiply. So we would like to use this data to plan in Tamil Nadu which are the facilities required, which are the facilities will have a multiplier effect by putting it on a particular place and will have a greater value. As Mr. Goyal said, we will ask our youth to also participate in the hackathon and see that how they will use this information available in public domain to create more potential for startups and for better utility and improving the lives and livelihoods of people in Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much for the opportunity and thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Vinay Thakur, COO, National E-Governance Division, MIT, से निवेदन है कि वे कृपया GIS के बारे में अपने विचार व्यक्त करें.
Honorable Union Minister for RD and Panchayati Raj, Honorable Minister of States, Honorable Secretary, Additional Secretary, PS Tamil Nadu, Senior Economic Advisors and other dignitaries. Today is a historical day as we have Ministry of RD is releasing this big data set which include 8 lakh rural facilities, more than 10 lakh habitations data and around 25 lakh kilometer of rural road data. So this is a huge data which has been created by them and now being released for the use of everyone. So would like to compliment them, the entire team, Honorable Minister and everyone for this great step. When we started working on Digital India in 2014, the vision of digital transformation that time, in addition to building the ICT infrastructure and services, we also decided that GIS is going to be a big enabler and to be used for better decision making and rolling out of citizen-centric services. So that time itself we decided that GIS will be used in all databases and for all the services. मैं बताना चाह रहा हूँ आरडी मिनिस्ट्री वैसे भी बहुत बड़ी यूज़र है आईसीटी की, पीएमजीएसवाई है, नरेगा है, सब जितने भी इनके प्रोग्राम हैं उसमें एंड टू एंड ऑटोमेशन इन्होंने किया है. तो उसके लिए भी मैं पूरी मिनिस्ट्री को एक बार से दोबारा बधाई देना चाहता हूँ. डाटा शेयरिंग एक बहुत बड़ा हम लोग उसके लिए ट्राई करते आ रहे हैं, परंतु उसमें काफ़ी चैलेंजेस भी हैं और इतना बड़ा डाटाबेस जो इन्होंने आज ओपन किया है एक राइट डायरेक्शन में काम है और ये बाकी डिपार्टमेंट्स को भी एनकरेज करेगा कि वो अपना डाटाबेस ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा शेयर करें और एक दूसरे के साथ यूज़ करें. तो उस डायरेक्शन में भी एक बहुत बड़ा स्टेप है. मैं भास्कराचार्य इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ स्पेस एप्लीकेशन एंड जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स में भी काम करता हूं और जो कि पीएम गति शक्ति प्रोजेक्ट इंप्लीमेंट कर रहा है. और अभी कुछ दिन पहले ही एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी साहब ने उसके बारे में मीटिंग ली कि कैसे हम दोनों एक दूसरे से कोलैबोरेट करें. सो ये जो डाटा आज रिलीज हो रहा है हम लोग पीएम गति शक्ति में इसको पूरा यूज करेंगे ताकि सारे के सारे डिपार्टमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स और यूटीज भी इसको प्लानिंग और एग्जीक्यूशन में यूज कर पाएं. और हम लोग इसका यूज सॉफ्टवेयर के थ्रू, एप्लीकेशन प्रोग्रामिंग इंटरफेस के थ्रू अनेबल करने वाले हैं. और पीएम गति शक्ति एक इंटीग्रेटेड प्लेटफॉर्म बनाया जा रहा है ताकि सारे के सारे डिपार्टमेंट अपने प्रोजेक्ट्स कि प्लानिंग, एग्जीक्यूशन, मॉनिटरिंग उसके साथ करें और डाटा भी एक दूसरे को अवेलेबल रहे। उसके अंतर्गत हम लोग सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स की कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग वर्कआउट कर रहे हैं और पूरा का पूरा रोड मैप इसके अंतर्गत बना रहे हैं, जो कि आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 2 महीने पहले लॉन्च किया था। और लास्ट में मैं आरडी मिनिस्ट्री को अगेन आई एम वेरी थैंकफुल फॉर दिस ग्रेट इनिशिएटिव विच इज इन द राइट डायरेक्शन टू मीट द गोल, जो गोल साहब ने बताया भी, द गोल ऑफ न्यू जियो स्पेशल पॉलिसी in order to make data open to everybody in the country. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं डेटा मीट के प्रतिनिधि से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया वर्चुअल माध्यम से समझौता ज्ञापन की प्रक्रिया को पूर्ण करें और अपने विचार व्यक्त करें।
Namaskar, from Bangalore, Karnataka. I'm sorry I couldn't be there physically, though I would have loved to be there physically. Respected ministries, dignitaries, and colleagues, my wishes to everyone here at this moment. And thank you and congratulations to everyone who has worked on these data set. I represent DataMeet community. DataMeet is a community of data science, open data, and open source enthusiasts from India. We are India's biggest open data community with nearly 3,000 members participating and contributing to the cause of opening data for innovation, economic growth, for transparency, for public service, and better research. We've been working for the cause of Indian open data and open GIS since 2011. We are grateful to be here and be part of this MOU and to collaborate, to work and spread the awareness about these data sets, to build knowledge base, to train folks, to make videos, documentation, to run hackathons and competitions, anything and everything that is required to make use of the full potential of the data sets that has been opened up today. Again, congratulations to everyone who has worked hard on this, and thank you. Looking forward to working with you all.
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं श्री नागेंद्रनाथ सिन्हा जी, सचिव ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अपने बहुमूल्य विचार व्यक्त करें।
माननीय ग्रामीण विकास एवं पंचायती राज मंत्री श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी, माननीय राज्य मंत्री ग्रामीण विकास, कंज्यूमर अफेयर्स, फूड एंड पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन साध्वी निरंजन ज्योति जी, माननीय राज्य मंत्री ग्रामीण विकास एवं स्टील श्री फग्गन सिंह कुलस्ते जी, मंचासीन चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर श्री प्रवीण महतो जी, प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी रूरल डेवलपमेंट एंड पंचायती राज तमिलनाडु श्रीमती अमुधा जी, डॉक्टर आशीष कुमार गोयल, अपर सचिव ग्रामीण विकास विभाग, इस सभागार में उपस्थित विभिन्न संस्थाएं, डेटा मीट, मैप माई इंडिया, इसरी, सीडैक और जितने हमारे पार्टनर्स और यहाँ पर जितने महानुभाव, देवियों, सज्जनों, मैं आप सबका इस कार्यक्रम में मंत्रालय की ओर से अभिनंदन करता हूँ। मुझे याद है कि हम लोग जब इस पहल के पीछे बढ़ रहे थे तो एक बात मन में हमारे कौंध रही थी, वो ये थी कि शहर में तो हम जब किसी घर को खोजना चाहते हैं, किसी जगह को जाना चाहते हैं, तो हमारे पास गूगल मैप्स, एप्पल मैप्स और इस तरह की कई सारी सुविधाएं। क्या हम ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में भी ऐसी सुविधाएं दे सकते हैं? इसी प्रश्न को लेकर जब मैंने डॉक्टर गोयल से बात की तो ये बात चर्चा प्रारंभ हुई और आज इसका एक बृहद स्वरूप आज हम देख रहे हैं। और ये स्वरूप सिर्फ रास्तों को खोजने तक सीमित नहीं रहा, बल्कि एक बहुत बड़ा इनिशिएटिव या पहल का रूप धारण कर चुका है, जिसमें जो ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में सभी सुविधाएं उपलब्ध हैं उन सभी के GIS कोऑर्डिनेट्स उनकी डेटा इत्यादि हम उपलब्ध करा रहे हैं और जो विभिन्न संस्थाएं हमारे साथ आज इकरारनामा कर रही हैं, उनसे हमारी अपेक्षा होगी कि जहां आप इसका बिजनेस प्रयोग अवश्य करें, सरकार को भी इनकी तरह तरह से एनालिसिस करके अवगत कराते रहें कि जो ग्रामीण क्षेत्र हैं उनमें सुविधाओं की कहाँ कमी है और कैसे हम उनको सुधार सकते हैं। ये मैं इसलिए नहीं कह रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैं एक विभाग का प्रतिनिधित्व कर रहा हूँ, मैं पूरे ग्रामीण समुदाय का प्रतिनिधित्व कर रहा हूँ जहाँ पर विकास की बड़ी अपेक्षा है। शहरी और ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में विकास की दरें भिन्न हैं। शहर क्षेत्र, ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में जब आप विकास की दरों को देखिएगा तो 3 से 4% है। शहरी क्षेत्रों में विकास की दर देखिएगा तो 8 से 10% है। अगर ग्रामीण और शहर, गांव और शहरों के बीच में खाई है तो उसको कौन पाटेगा? हम ही लोग पाटेंगे। ये सभी देशभक्त जितने लोग हैं वही पाटेंगे और इस पाटने के लिए आप सब लोगों का सहयोग जरूरी है। और हम ये जो GIS डेटा सेट्स रिलीज कर रहे हैं वो इसी दिशा में कदम है, ताकि जो ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में संभावनाएं छिपी हुई हैं उन संभावनाओं की हम पहचान करें। आपने सुना कि सिर्फ विद्यालय, अस्पताल और ग्रामीण मार्केट ही नहीं है, इसमें कोल्ड स्टोरेज भी है, वेयर हाउस भी है और इस तरह कई सारी फैसिलिटीज हैं। इन फैसिलिटीज को हम उपलब्ध कराएंगे और गति शक्ति के साथ जो हमने औपचारिक रूप से समझौता नहीं किया क्योंकि सभी सरकार के भाग हैं, ये भी लेयर्स उपलब्ध रहेंगी और आपके माध्यम से भी उपलब्ध रहेंगी ताकि कोई भी उद्योगपति, व्यापारी, स्टार्टअप, ये सारे के सारे लोग इसका उपयोग कर सकें और नई नई सेवाएं, सुविधाएं उपलब्ध करा सकें। मैं यहां यह कहना चाहता हूं कि डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पोस्ट एवं इस पंचायती राज मंत्रालय का स्वामित्व ये हर घर को एक नई पहचान देने वाला है। तो बेसिकली लॉजिस्टिक क्षेत्र में भी इससे बहुत बड़ी प्रगति होने वाली। आप इस बात को सीमित नहीं है कि फलाना आदमी फलाना गांव इससे पहुंच जाएगा, आप बिल्कुल वहां पहुंचा सकते हैं और हो सकता है कि इससे आगे फिर आप ड्रोन के माध्यम से भी उसको वहां पे सामानों की डिलीवरी करा सकते हैं। कोई आदमी वैक्सीन है और वैक्सीन देना है या कोई ऐसी दवा देनी है और वो सीधे ड्रोन के माध्यम से पहुंच सकता है क्योंकि आपने उसका डिजिटल एड्रेस इनेबल कर दिया है। तो बहुत बड़ी ये मेरे विचार से पहल है और इसका बहुत दूरगामी परिणाम रहेगा। मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं और आशीष जी ने बहुत सारी जो उनका प्रभाग इस संबंध में पहल कर रहा है उसके बारे में जानकारी दी। मैं इसी बात को आगे बढ़ाते हुए 2 और पहलों का जिक्र करना चाहता हूं। हमारे मंत्रालय ने महात्मा गांधी नरेगा कार्यक्रम के लिए कार्य करते समय युक्त धारा नाम की एक पहल की है जो NRSC के सहयोग से बनाई गई है। उस युक्त धारा पहल में नेचुरल रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट के लिए जितने भी तरह के एसेट बनने चाहिए उन सभी की पहचान कर ली गई। ये इससे करने से फायदा क्या होगा आप पूछ सकते हैं, क्योंकि हम तो किसी कार्यक्रम के परिप्रेक्ष्य में देख रहे हैं। इसका फायदा ये होगा कि सभी लोग मिलकर उस पर कोलैबोरेट कर सकते हैं। अगर हमने ये काम किया है तो जरूरी नहीं है कि वो प्रधानमंत्री कृषि सिंचाई योजना से हो। अगर वो वहां पे वो एसेट्स पहचानी हुई हैं तो दूसरे भी आके उसका निर्माण कर सकते हैं, वॉलंटरली भी हो सकता है। तो नेशनल इकोनॉमिक इफिशिएंसी बढ़ाने की दिशा में भी हम काम कर रहे हैं। इसके अलावा एक मिशन अंत्योदय नाम की एक पहल है जिसके माध्यम से ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में जिस प्रकार जितनी भी सुविधाएं हैं उन सब की भी हम पहचान कर रहे हैं। उनका हमने GIS मैपिंग किया है और वो भी डेटा भी पूरा नहीं इसलिए हम उसको रिलीज नहीं कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो भी भविष्य में पूरा होगा, उसको भी हम उपलब्ध कराएंगे। उद्देश्य यह है कि ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में जितनी भी प्रकार की सुविधाएं हैं वो सभी सुविधाएं लोगों को उपलब्ध रहे, किसानों को भी उपलब्ध रहे, उद्योगपतियों को भी उपलब्ध रहे, व्यापारियों को भी उपलब्ध रहे, लॉजिस्टिक प्रोवाइडर्स को भी उपलब्ध रहे, ट्रांसपोर्टर्स को उपलब्ध रहे। जब तक उद्योग व्यापार ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों से प्रारंभ नहीं होंगे, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में जो कृषि क्षेत्र पे ही रोजगार का दबाव है वो कम नहीं होगा और इस प्रकार से ग्रामीण इलाकों में समृद्धि नहीं आ पाएगी। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी विजन जो हमारे माननीय मंत्री जी का है, हमारे माननीय राज्य मंत्रीगणों का है, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का है, आत्मनिर्भरता लाने का, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में समृद्धि बढ़ाने का, उसकी दिशा में ये किया गया एक कदम है और मुझे लगता है कि इसके काफ़ी दूरगामी परिणाम होंगे। मैं इस अवसर पे माननीय मंत्री जी की अनुमति लेकर ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय सामान्यतः तो ग्रामीण से समझा जाता है कि हम लोग तकनीक के प्रयोग में बहुत ज़्यादा पहल नहीं करते, जो बाकी है वो बायोटेक्नोलॉजी और इस तरह के फ्रंटियर्स पे काम करते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। मैं आपको ये कहना चाहता हूँ, वस्तुतः हम ग्रामीण सड़कों के लिए भी एक नया टेक्नोलॉजी विजन का विकास कर रहे हैं और शीघ्र ही माननीय मंत्री जी का मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त करके उसे भी आपके सामने साझा करेंगे। उद्देश्य ये है कि ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में सड़क निर्माण और उससे जुड़ी जो सुविधाएं हैं उसकी टेक्नोलॉजी में निरंतर परिवर्तन आता रहना चाहिए। ऐसा नहीं कि जो काम हमने 1955 में किया वो आज भी हम करें। हम निरंतर नई तकनीकों का प्रयोग करना चाहते हैं। उद्देश्य क्या है? कॉस्ट में कमी लाई जाए, जो इसका पर्यावरण पर प्रभाव पड़ रहा है उसमें उस प्रभाव को कम किया जा सके। आपने देखा एक जो फिल्म दिखाई गई थी उसमें एक वर्टजन की एक मशीन चल रही थी, वो उस मशीन के माध्यम से फुल डेप्थ रिसाइकलिंग करते हैं। उस मशीन के माध्यम से जब हम पुरानी सड़कें हैं उसमें जो एग्रीगेट लगा हुआ उसको उखाड़ के पुनः प्रयोग में लाते हैं। इस तरह की कई सारी पहलें हैं जिसके माध्यम से जो हमारी सड़कों के या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के निर्माण का प्रकृति पर प्रभाव पड़ रहा है उसको हम कम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। मैं पुनः आशीष जी को इस पहल के लिए बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। मुझे लगता है कि इसके माध्यम से और भी हम इसका विकास करें जिससे कि ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों के विकास को नई गति मिले, नई दिशा मिले। पुनः इस प्रयास के लिए आपको साधुवाद।
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं साध्वी निरंजन ज्योति जी, राज्य मंत्री उपभोक्ता मामले एवं खाद्य एवं लोक वितरण एवं ग्रामीण विकास से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अपने बहुमूल्य विचार व्यक्त करें।
आज एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय की पहल डेटाबेस को सार्वजनिक करने के लिए माननीय मंत्री जी ने जो पहल की है, आज के इस कार्यक्रम में मेरे बड़े भाई पंचायती राज और ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय में हम सबके वरिष्ठ मंत्री आदरणीय गिरिराज जी, ग्रामीण विकास इस्पात मंत्रालय में मंत्री आदरणीय कुलस्ते जी, और जिनके सुझाव अभी हम सब लोग सुन रहे थे, ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय के सेक्रेटरी साहब नागेंद्रनाथ जी, प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना को जिन्होंने बहुत बारीकी से देख करके आज ये उपलब्धि हासिल की, ऐसे आशीष जी, तमिलनाडु से आई हुई श्री अमोदा जी प्रमुख, आपको वड़क्कम, धन्यवाद। और हमारे प्रेमेंद्र जी महतो, ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय के सभी अधिकारीगण और इस महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम में जिन्होंने अपना साझा किया है, समझौते किए हैं, उन सब का मैं मंत्रालय की तरफ से अभिनंदन करती हूँ। वर्चुअल जो जुड़े हुए हैं उन सज्जनों का भी मैं अभिनंदन करते हुए, आज जब आदरणीय सेना साहब कह रहे थे ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय और पंचायती राज, भारत सरकार का मतलब है सारे मंत्रालय मिल करके। जब सारे मंत्रालय मिलते हैं तभी सरकार बनती है। और मुझे लग रहा है ये कालखंड एक ऐसा है कि चाहे कोई भी मंत्रालय हो, आज कंप्यूटर का युग है, तकनीक का युग है, आज सब लोग अपने घर बैठे सब चीज देखना चाहते हैं। तो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जहां अन्य मंत्रालयों को इंगित किया, वहीं हमारा ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय पीछे रहे, तो मुझे लग रहा है ये अच्छा नहीं था। आज के दिन में जो प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना आज एक चर्चा का विषय है। हम किसी भी जिले में जाते हैं, लोग कहते हैं हमारे यहाँ प्रधानमंत्री सड़क होनी चाहिए। तो मैं सोचती हूँ कि प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना और पीडब्ल्यूडी में दोनों में अंतर क्या है? तो अंतर इतना है कि प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना जहां बन जाती है वहां 5 साल तक बोलना नहीं पड़ता, इतनी मजबूती से बनती है, इतनी तकनीकी से बनती है। यही कारण है कि गांव में लोग ज्यादातर प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना पसंद करते हैं। तो मैं आज के दिन स्वर्गीय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी को नमन करना चाहती हूं, जिन्होंने इस महत्वपूर्ण योजना को गांव को जोड़ने के लिए, और मुझे कहने में कोई परहेज नहीं है, जो पंडित दीनदयाल जी ने सपना देखा था, जो सुविधाएं शहरों में वो गांव के व्यक्तियों को कैसे मिले, तो ये माननीय स्वर्गीय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी ने प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना लागू करके धरातल पर उतारा था। इसलिए हम सब की तरफ से हम आज उनको श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करते हैं, नमन भी करते हैं, क्योंकि बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। मैं अतिशयोक्ति नहीं है, मैं जिस गांव में जन्मी थी, आजादी के बाद कोई सड़क नहीं, 9 किलोमीटर। बरसात के सीजन में लोग चारपाई में लद के अस्पताल जाते थे। लेकिन मैं अभिनंदन करती हूं स्वर्गीय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी को, जब वो सरकार में आए इतने वर्षों के बाद, तो मैं अनुभव कर रही हूं कि जैसा मेरा गांव वैसे बहुत सारे गांव थे जो सड़क से टूटे हुए थे। और सड़क को तो मैं तो मानती हूं कि जैसे हमारा शरीर है, शरीर में यदि पूरे शरीर में खून का संचार ना हो, जिस अंग में खून नहीं जाता वो अपंग हो जाता है, अपाहिज हो जाता है। ऐसे ही मैं मानती हूं सड़कें हमारे देश के लिए एक धमनियों का काम करती हैं, दौड़ने का काम करती हैं। और मैं माननीय मंत्री जी का अभिनंदन करती हूं कि पंचायती राज में जिन्होंने स्वामित्व योजना, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के दिशा निर्देशन पर स्वामित्व योजना, वो भी एक डेटाबेस है जो आपके कंप्यूटर में होगा। तो मैं तो इतना मानती हूँ, हम कई गांव में जाते हैं, मालूम है कि प्रधानमंत्री सड़क है, लेकिन किस गांव तक गई है, हम उस गांव पहुंचना चाहे तो पहुंच नहीं सकते। जिस दिन ये सबके संज्ञान में आ जाएगा, एक कंप्यूटर में आ जाएगा, तो व्यक्ति सहज में पहुंच जाएगा। जैसे बड़े शहरों में पहुंचता है, ऐसे ही अपना मोबाइल चालू करेगा और गांव में पहुंच जाएगा। तो मैं माननीय मंत्री जी लगातार ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय के लिए, चाहे ये प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना नहीं, आवास योजना है, चाहे मनरेगा है, चाहे और कोई योजना है, सब पर माननीय मंत्री जी, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी की उम्मीदों को खरा उतार रहे हैं। इसके लिए मैं आप सबकी तरफ से चाहूंगी कि माननीय मंत्री जी को ताली बजा के जरूर स्वागत करना चाहिए, क्योंकि ये बहुत छोटा काम नहीं है। और मेरा तो मानना है कि भारत की 70% जनता गांव में रहती है, और गांव को सुविधाएं उपलब्ध कराना ये ग्रामीण विकास मंत्रालय का मंत्र भी है और विजन भी है। हम इसको चाहे कोई भी योजना के तहत हो, हम गांव को विकसित करेंगे। तो मैं तो इतने कह सकती हूँ, गांव विकसित होंगे तो देश अपने आप विकसित होगा। इसीलिए गांवों को विकसित करना हम सबकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है। आज हम सब लोग बैठे, आत्मनिर्भर भारत, इसमें भी हम आत्मनिर्भर हो, गांव भी हमारे आत्मनिर्भर हो। रोड, चाहे किसान हो, चाहे मजदूर हो, चाहे कोई भी हो, सबके लिए सड़क जरूरी है। और सड़क एक अच्छी होती है तो गाड़ी की सेफ्टी रहती है, समय भी बचता है, बहुत सारे उपयोग में आने वाली। मैं तो इतने कहूंगी कि सड़कें हमारे शरीर में दौड़ते हुए नसों की तरह हैं। नसें हमारी तंदुरुस्त हैं तो पूरे अंग को खून पहुंचता है, रक्त पहुंचता है। ऐसे ये सड़कें हैं। मैं माननीय मंत्री जी का अभिनंदन करती हूँ। मैं अभी भाग करके आपके बीच में पहुंची हूँ। मैं लेट हो गई हूँ आपके बीच में आने में, लेकिन फिर भी आप लोगों ने जो कार्यक्रम रखा है, मैं मंत्रालय के समस्त अधिकारियों का भी अभिनंदन करती हूँ कि हमारा मंत्रालय दिनों दिन प्रगति कर रहा है। माननीय मंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू मैम। अब मैं श्री फग्गन सिंह कुलस्ते जी, राज्य मंत्री इस्पात एवं ग्रामीण विकास से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अपने बहुमूल्य विचार व्यक्त करें।
GIS इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में हमारे ग्रामीण विकास पंचायत मंत्री बड़े भाई आदरणीय गिरिराज जी, मेरी बहन सुश्री रंजन ज्योति जी, सेक्रेटरी साहब श्री नागेंद्रनाथ सिन्हा जी, हमारे मुख्य आर्थिक सलाहकार प्रण महतो जी, तमिलनाडु से हमारे पी सुधा प्रधान जी, सचिव ग्रामीण विकास, और विशेषकर हमारे आशीष जी जो हमारे एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी हैं, जिनने इस पूरे योजना को साकार रूप देने के लिए निरंतर प्रयास उनने किया है और आज इस मुकाम तक जिनने पहुंचाया है। ऐसे हमारे गोयल जी, यहाँ पर अलग अलग संस्थाओं के जो हमारे प्रतिनिधि हैं जिनसे हमारा मुझ हुआ है, और यहाँ पर उपस्थित सभी हमारे विभाग के अन्य प्रतिनिधि, संस्थाओं के जो प्रमुख हैं जिनने वर्चुअल भी शामिल हुए, ऐसे सभी लोगों को बहुत बधाई देता हूँ। और आज जब ग्रामीण विकास के बारे में हम बात करते हैं, प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना के बारे में बात करते हैं, तो अभी दीदी निरंजन जी ने अटल जी का उल्लेख किया, तो मुझे याद है जब मैं उस समय मंत्री जी में उनके साथ में मंत्री के नाते काम किया, तो जब इस योजना को लॉन्च किया गया था उस समय अटल जी को सारे हिंदुस्तान के प्रेस और बाकी जितने जो लोग हैं जिनको हम ये कह सकते हैं जिनने कभी इस देश के विजन के बारे में सोचा नहीं, गांव के बारे में सोचा नहीं, ऐसे लोग कहते थे कि अटल जी ये पैसा आएगा कहां से, कैसे इस काम को, इतना बड़े संकल्प को आप पूरा करेंगे, इसको कैसे आगे बढ़ाएंगे। और आज मैं कह सकता हूं कि इन 20 वर्षों की इस यात्रा में आज जैसे मेरे जैसे जिला में जो हमारे ट्राइबल क्षेत्र है, ऐसे क्षेत्र में लगभग हमने 90% गांवों को हमने मुख्य मार्ग से जोड़ दिया है। ये आप पूरे हिंदुस्तान में आप देख सकते हैं। और जो अर्बन क्षेत्र है वहां हम करीब 500 की जो आबादी है वहां तक पहुंचे। जो गांव है, रूरल क्षेत्र है, हम 250 की आबादी तक पहुंच गए। अगर पहाड़ी क्षेत्र की हम बात कर लें, पूर्वोत्तर क्षेत्र की बात कर लें, तो इससे और भी हम नीचे तक पहुंच गए। ये इतना बड़ा से संरचना विकास में हमने आगे बढ़े हैं। और इससे आज हम कह सकते हैं ये जो हमारी ये जो कल्पना हो रही, मैं देख रहा था कि जब हमारे आशीष जी उल्लेख कर रहे थे, आप सोचिए हिंदुस्तान के कितने ऐसे गांवों को हमने जोड़ा है जहां पर लोग पहुंच नहीं सकते थे। हिंदुस्तान के ऐसे ऐसे क्षेत्र हैं जिनका उल्लेख अभी रंजन जी कर रही थी कि वास्तव में ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में आज इस योजना को लोग इतना सराहते हैं। बीच में एक दौर आया था कि ये 4 के बाद इसमें थोड़ा परिवर्तन हुआ। और इस स्कीम को एक प्रकार की बंद करने की स्थिति में हम पहुंच गए। सारे देश भर से हमारे अनेक तरह के जो लोग हैं, विशेषज्ञ हैं, इन सबके सजेशन के बाद फिर से उसको बहाली हुई। और बहाली करने के साथ साथ उसको जो आज हम पक्की सड़क की कल्पना हम कर रहे हैं, उस समय जब प्रारंभ हुआ, बीच में उसको WBM की तरह शुरू हुआ, बाद में जब ये निरंतर प्रेशर बढ़ा तो फिर से उसको इसी रूप में हमने पूरा किया और अभी सरकार बनने के बाद इस काम को हमने आगे बढ़ाया। तो ये बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन है कनेक्टिविटी को लेकर के। तो मैं आज कह सकता हूं कि ये जो अभी नए प्रयोग हो रहे हैं, नई तकनीक के आधार पर है, और हमारे कुछ संस्थाओं ने जैसे अभी वो किया है, तो मैं इसको देख रहा था कि वास्तव में अगर इनको देखने के बाद जो हमारी संस्थाओं की जो तकनीक है, और इससे और भी हमारे इसे क्वालिटी में जो इम्प्रूव होगा, और समय समय में हमको सजेशंस भी मिलेंगे, विभाग को और बेहतर हम और कैसे कर सकते हैं, ये हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी की ये कल्पना और आदरणीय हमारे मंत्री जी भाई गिरिराज जी इसको कैसे और बढ़ा सकते हैं, हम सब मिलकर के इस काम को एक मुकाम तक पहुंचाना चाहते हैं। और इसलिए इसको आने वाले वर्षों में यही 24 जब हम चर्चा करते हैं तो इसके बारे में अनेक स्थानों में इस बात की परिकल्पना होती है, और निश्चित तौर से इसके बारे में जो हमारी अप्रोचेस है, एक लोगों के मन में इस प्रकार की जो शंकाएं हैं, क्वालिटी पर उनको समयबद्ध तरीके से कैसे हम पूरा कर सकते हैं, इस बात की शंका लोगों के मन में रहती है। परंतु मैं आज विश्वास के साथ कह सकता हूं कि निरंतर ये जो हम सबका प्रयास है, विभाग का प्रयास है, मंत्री जी का इस पे निरंतर एक सतत पहल है, और इसके कारण मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि आज जो कुछ भी है, आज जो हम वो कर रहे हैं, विभाग हमारे तकनीकी क्षेत्र में और अग्रणी भूमिका निभाएगा। केवल ग्रामीण विकास तक नहीं, अनेक क्षेत्रों में हम आगे बढ़े हैं, और इसके लिए अन्य आज नई उपलब्धियों की तरह आप आवास के क्षेत्र में देख सकते हैं, नरेगा के बारे में भी आदरणीय मंत्री जी का कई महत्वपूर्ण उसके अंदर भूमिका है। आज हर सेक्टर को, आज जो मजदूर हैं उनके क्षेत्र में भी, अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में भी हम इसको और प्रभावी तरीके से कैसे कर सकते हैं, राज्यों से परामर्श, उनके विशेषज्ञों से भी जो इस क्षेत्र सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए हैं, एम्प्लॉयमेंट के क्षेत्र में जो लोगों को काम, और इसके कारण प्रधानमंत्री जी आत्मनिर्भर भारत की जो कल्पना क्या है, मुझे लगता है इसका बहुत बड़ा रोल ग्रामीण विकास का है, और हम सब मिलकर के इसको पूरा करेंगे ऐसी अपेक्षा करते हुए, ये जो भावना है, ये हम जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, इस प्रयास में हम सब मिलकर के सफल होंगे, ऐसे विश्वास के साथ आप सबको धन्यवाद, नमस्कार।
थैंक यू सर। अब मैं माननीय मंत्री महोदय श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी, ग्रामीण विकास एवं पंचायती राज से निवेदन करती हूं कि वे कृपया मंच पर आएं और अपने बहुमूल्य विचार व्यक्त करें।
आज मैं सर्वप्रथम देश के पूर्व स्वर्गीय अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी को नमन करूंगा, जिनके कारण आज ये स्थिति उत्पन्न हुई है। हम ग्रामीण सड़कों में आत्मनिर्भर हुए और हैबिटेशन तक पहुंच पाए। मैं इस अवसर पर अपने अनुभवों को सजोए हुए चुनावी व्यस्तता के साथ थोड़ा विलंब हुआ तो आप हम सबों से क्षमा याचना की। ऐसे सरल साध्वी निरंजना जी, ज्योति जी हमारी बहन,
एक लंबे राजनीतिक अनुभवों के साथ यहां तक अटल जी से लेके मोदी जी तक सरकार में काम करते रहना, हमारे सहयोगी मान्यवर फगन सिंह कुलस्ते जी, हमारे सचिव NN सिन्हा, जो टेक्नोलॉजी, ये एक अलग बात है कि ITN है, लेकिन टेक्नोलॉजी को महत्व दे करके ये अवसर नहीं है कि जिस मनरेगा के ऊपर बरसों तक लोगों ने कई तरह के आरोप लगाए, उस मनरेगा के लूप होल्स को रोकने में हमने टेक्नोलॉजी का सहारा लिया। वैसे सचिव निरंतर काम करने वाले मानवर NN सिन्हा जी, हमारे बीच जिन्होंने दूरी कहा कि मैं उतने दूर से आया हूं, ग्रामीण विकास के सचिव तमिलनाडु, आज तो दूरियां घट गई है, एक मुट्ठी में दूरी हो गया है। लेकिन मैं मुद्दा जी को भी दूरियों को कहता हूं कम करें, और मैं उनको कोटिशा धन्यवाद देता कि आज इस समय एनिमल हस्बेंड्री एक देश के अंदर अगर रूरल इकोनॉमी को डेवलप कर रहा है, तो वहीं RD डिपार्टमेंट उसके कनेक्टिविटी में, चाहे रोजगार में, उसमें तमिलनाडु भारत सरकार वहां अधिक से अधिक राशि देके काम करने का काम कर रहा है। हम श्री प्रवीण महतो जी, जो हमारे मुख्य आर्थिक सलाहकार हैं, एडवाइजर हैं, और इस आज के कार्यक्रम के बीच अपने अनुभवों को निरंतर जोड़ते रहना, वैसे हमारे एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी आशीष गोयल जी, जो इस कार्यक्रम के पूरे सचिव से, डिपार्टमेंट निर्डा, NIRD से, सबसे मिलते हुए एक स्वरूप देना कि कैसे प्रधानमंत्री के सपनों को हम यहां तक पहुंचाएं, ऐसे आशीष गोयल जी। मैं ESRI इंडिया, मैप इंडिया, मैप माई इंडिया और डाटा नीट, तीनों को मैं धन्यवाद देता, और यहां उपस्थित हमारे मीडिया के सभी भाई बंधु और आए हुए अधिकारीगण, जो केवल गति शक्ति मंत्रालय से भी तमाम यहां आए हुए। लेकिन आज हमने एक व्यक्ति से कहा कि कार्यक्रम है, कहा क्या कार्यक्रम है? हम के कार्यक्रम, ये कार्यक्रम है जो भारत को आत्मनिर्भर भारत बनाने में, और जो प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के सपनों को साकार करने में पंचायती राज और RD विभाग उसको गति देने का काम करेगा, वो विभाग है, वो कार्यक्रम है। तो मैंने उस कार्यक्रम की रूपरेखा बताया। आपने हमारे पूर्व वक्ताओं से सुना कि कैसे अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी ने एक सड़कों का, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का, दुनिया जो भी तरक्की की है वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को साथ लेकर के, हम बड़ी बड़ी सड़कों को तो हमने, आज भी देश में आबादी, जब हम आजाद हुए थे तो 80% आबादी गांव की थी, घटते घटते अब 70% पर आए हैं, कहीं 68 है। इस आबादी को कनेक्ट कैसे करना, और कनेक्ट करके बेहतर जिंदगी ही नहीं बल्कि रोजगार के अवसर कैसे पहुंचाना। तो इस कारण से आज अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी के बाद ये गति तो चलते रहा। अटल जी ने जिस अभियान को छेड़ा, सरकारें आती रही, सरकार काम कर, लेकिन नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने इतनी गति दी कि मैं कह नहीं सकता। अगर 2009 से 2014 में 1,88,000 किलोमीटर सड़कों का निर्माण हुआ, तो पिछले 6 सालों में 3 लाख किलोमीटर नरेंद्र मोदी के नेतृत्व में। क्योंकि मेरा थीम है, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री का सोच है, गांव गरीब किसान, तो हम उसको बेहतर जिंदगी के लिए, और जब तक कनेक्टिविटी नहीं होगी, चाहे जो भी हो, एयरबेज, रोडवेज, वाटरवेज, उनको चाहिए, चाहे एयरबेज हो, जो भी हो, तो ऐसे में कि लगभग 7 लाख किलोमीटर, और हमने अपने कार्यकाल में 1,62,000 हैबिटेशन को नए मुकाम पर ले जाने का काम किया। आज जब कह रहे थे आशीष गोयल कि हम टेक्नोलॉजी का कैसे प्रयोग करते, और टेक्नोलॉजी का प्रयोग करके चाहे हम इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी का इतना ज्यादा उपयोग कर रहे हैं कि आज मुझे कहते हुए फक्र हो रहा है कि हम उसके क्वालिटी को भी पकड़ रहे हैं और पैसे भी बचा रहे हैं। 5,000 करोड़ जो बेकार चला जाता टेक्नोलॉजी का सहारा लेकर के, उन सड़कों की जरूरत नहीं थी कि वहां इतना थिकनेस हो, वहां इस ढंग का हो, तो हम टेक्नोलॉजी का सहारा लेकर के सरकार के पैसे को भी बचा रहे हैं, गुणवत्ता को भी ले जा रहे हैं, चाहे वो ओमास हो, चाहे ई मार्ग मेंटेनेंस का हो, चाहे जीपी सड़क हो, ये सारे टेक्नोलॉजी का। आज ग्रामीण भारत में लगभग 45 लाख किलोमीटर से अधिक सड़कें हैं। अब मुझे आज ये कहने में कि आने वाले दिन में, पहले हमारे पास नहीं था ये डेटा, जब मोदी जी आए हैं तो आज हम मनरेगा में 58 लाख सड़कों को जियो टैगिंग कर चुके हैं, जिसे हम, ये 58 लाख सड़कें। इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूं, एक बार 4-5 साल पहले एक मित्र किसी राज्य में जा रहे थे, गूगल का सहारा लिया, तो गूगल तो स्टेट एनएच पर दिखा दिया, उसने दिखाया ये 20 किलोमीटर गलत डायरेक्शन में एक गांव में जाकर के वो रास्ता बंद हो गया। वो गूगल के सहारे जा रहे थे, किसी था नहीं। आज ये डेटा किसी को 20 किलोमीटर अंधेरे में नहीं ले जाएगा, बल्कि उजाले में रास्ता दिखाएगा। ये इस डेटा का महत्व होगा। और जब हम मनरेगा को भी जियो टैगिंग करके वहां कनेक्ट करेंगे, तो मुझे लगता है एक नई अपॉर्चुनिटी देगा। आज अपॉर्चुनिटी शब्द का प्रयोग हम कर रहे हैं, इसलिए कर रहे हैं कि जब नागेंद्र जी कह रहे थे, कोरोना ने दिखाया कि नॉर्थ ईस्ट में कैसे ड्रोन से जा रहा है। अगर मेरे पास पूरा मैपिंग रहेगा तो हम मार्केटिंग की एक नई दिशा होगी। शहरों में तो है, लेकिन गांव तक हम ले जाने में, और इसमें कई चीजें निकल के आएगी। ये एक अलग बात है, जियोग्राफिक इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम के अधीन हम ये आज की तारीख में जो कहा गया कि हॉस्पिटल, रूरल जो भी चीजें हैं, चाहे मार्केट हो, स्कूल हो, अस्पताल हो, सड़क, ये रेलवे स्टेशन हो, बाजार हो, ये 8 लाख से अधिक एसेट हमारे पास रूरल फैसिलिटी का डेटा है। 10 लाख से ज्यादा आपको कहा गया कि सारे हैबिटेशन का रखा गया है, लेकिन मैं देखता हूं कि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने शुरू से कहा कि जिसके पास डेटा है, डेटा इज गोल्ड। अगर डेटा है, और बार बार जो विदेशी सारे सिस्टम हैं वो हमारे डेटा को लेने के लिए तरह तरह के उपक्रम करते हैं, अनैतिक उपक्रम, और उस अनैतिक उपक्रम, लेकिन आज भारत के प्रधानमंत्री ने पूरे भारत के सभी विभागों को जो डेटा है उसको कहा पब्लिक प्लेटफॉर्म पर लाओ, पब्लिक डोमेन में लाओ। पब्लिक डोमेन में लाने से एक ऐसा सिस्टम होगा, एक ऐसा माहौल क्रिएट होगा, कई लड़के स्टार्टअप करेंगे उस पे, कई लड़के इनोवेशन करेंगे। आज हमारे यहां किसी ने सोचा नहीं था कि यह स्टार्टअप 14,000 24,000 स्टार्टअप हमारे पास आ जाएंगे। वो भी डेटा का एक माध्यम है जो भी कर रहे हैं। तो मुझे तो लग रहा है कि आज ये भारत एक तरह से जो डेटा है 1.3 मिलियन स्क्वायर माइल में बसा हुआ, 130-40 करोड़ की आबादी हो गई है। अब इस 130 और 40 करोड़ की आबादी अगर आप देखेंगे, दुनिया भी अभी इसी के सहारे, सबसे छोटा देश सिंगापुर का मुश्किल से आप उसका जो एरिया है 279 स्क्वायर मील है, लेकिन वो इस डेटा के माध्यम से, प्लानिंग के माध्यम से, वो जो प्लानिंग कर रहा है, वो प्लानिंग केवल वही नहीं, जापान, यूरोपियन समूह, अमेरिका, इंग्लैंड, चाइना, ये सारे देश कर रहे हैं। आज देश के प्रधानमंत्री भारत को उन ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाना चाहते हैं जिन ऊंचाइयों पर हम कहने को तो विश्व गुरु, आज देश का प्रधानमंत्री, आज लीडिंग कंट्री के लीडर के रूप में भारत को स्थापित करने का काम किया है। ये डेटा भी उसका एक भागीदार बनेगा जब हमारे डेटा पूरे दुनिया में होगा। ये केवल ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर को नहीं, जैसे कृषि, कंस्ट्रक्शन, इन सब को नहीं, आपने पहले भी कहा बैंकिंग, रिटेल, कुछ वक्ताओं ने रखा, ये कई सेक्टर को और फैसिलिटेट करेगा। और जब ये आएगा तो मैं समझता हूं आने वाले दिन में, अभी आपको मैं बताऊं कि पंचायती राज मंत्रालय अब तक 2014 में प्रधानमंत्री ने छोटे शहरों का एक मास्टर प्लान की बात की। अब प्रधानमंत्री के नेतृत्व में हम पंचायतों का मास्टर प्लान बना रहे हैं। जब मास्टर प्लान बनाएंगे तो ये डेटा के आधार पर ही बनेगा। और जब डेटा के आधार पर बनेगा, क्योंकि पूरी दुनिया की आबादी का हम 18% टेक्निकली है, 20% प्रैक्टिकली है, और जमीन हमारे पास 2.5% है। तो जब ये इतनी खाई है दुनिया के, हमारे पास जनसंख्या की बढ़ोतरी है, तो इस स्थिति में हमें डेटा के माध्यम से ही प्लानिंग करना होगा। चाहे औद्योगिक रफ्तार तेजी बढ़ रहा है तो हम इसको लेंगे। इसी के क्रम में हमने पंचायत को भी प्रधानमंत्री के नेतृत्व में, अब पंचायतों का भी एक मास्टर प्लान, ये नहीं कि जहां मन हुआ वहां कुछ बन गया। जो हमने युक्त धारा पोर्टल बनाया नरेगा के साथ, वो भी पंचायत का एक हिस्सा है प्लानिंग का, कि कहाँ पानी का होगा, कहाँ पोखरा होगा, कहाँ सड़क होगा, कहाँ क्या होगा। तो आज ये डेटा एक ऐसा डेटा होगा, इस डेटे का महत्व मुझे याद है हमारे डिपार्टमेंट में, एलआर डिपार्टमेंट, जो लैंड पार्सल का डेटा, अब अगर कोई विभाग कहे कि किस राज्य में फलाने डिस्ट्रिक्ट में सरकारी लैंड कितनी है, तो वो डेटा आज उपलब्ध है, हम तुरंत उस डेटा को सरकार के पास हमसे मांगेगा, हम रिपोर्ट दे देंगे। तो ये डेटा की मजबूती है। मैं आज के इस कार्यक्रम में मैं सबों को धन्यवाद देते हुए मैं इतना कहूंगा कि अगर सिंगापुर जैसा छोटा देश डेटा का यूटिलाइज करके जीआईएस के डेटा को लैंड यूटिलाइजेशन अवेलेबिलिटी में परिवर्तित कर दिया है, और ये कोई इच्छा शक्ति की कमी थी, लेकिन देश के प्रधानमंत्री की इच्छा शक्ति, आज पूरा विश्व डेटा के आधार पे है। सिंगापुर ने टूरिज्म किया, डेटा के आधार पर लोग वहां पहुंचते हैं। मैं इतना ही कहूंगा कि आज जो प्लान्ड सिटी ये भी डेटा के अनुसार ही होगा, आज रूरल इकोनॉमी ये भी डेटा के अनुसार होगा। अब हम शहरों में जगह नहीं है तो गांव की ओर जाएंगे, गांव में कहां जाएंगे, कैसे जाएंगे जब प्लानिंग होगा। 4 लेन तो निकल गया, हमें प्रधानमंत्री सड़क योजना से सड़कें तो निकल गई, चौड़ाई उसकी बढ़ गई। अब डेटा के अनुसार देखेगा ये कितना किलोमीटर, यहां कौन सा इंडस्ट्रियल प्लेस होगा। आज मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि इस डेटा के माध्यम से हम एक नए भारत का निर्माण करने में एक नया रास्ता, नया केवल एमओयू, तो ये मैप इन इंडिया जो है, मैप माई इंडिया, ये काम तो कर ही रहा, लेकिन उनको हमने फैसिलिटेट कर दिया, ये देश को अब फायदा होगा। मैं समझ रहा हूं कि आज जो एमओयू साइन हुआ है वो मैप माई इंडिया आत्मनिर्भर भारत का ही एक अंग है। इससे फायदा होगा, गांव-गांव के क्षेत्र में भी मैपिंग कर पाएंगे। टेलीकॉम और नेटवर्क सर्विसेज ये भी इस डेटा को मदद करेगा, इस डेटा के माध्यम से उनको मदद होगा। नेटवर्क, प्रधानमंत्री का सपना है हर घर तक नेटवर्क ले जाना, हर गांव तक नेटवर्क ले जाना, तो ये इससे फायदा होगा। अर्बन प्लानिंग में तो फायदा होगा ही, और मैंने ग्राम पंचायत की बात आपके सामने रखा। ट्रांसपोर्टेशन जो प्लानिंग है, जो गति शक्ति प्रधानमंत्री ने, उसमें इसका एक बहुत बड़ा योगदान होगा। और सबसे बड़ा योगदान होगा डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट में। जब डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट में तुरंत जो टीम है वो इस मैपिंग के सहारे एक्यूवेशन के सारे रास्ते खोज निकालेंगे तुरंत, तो ये आज का जो एमओयू है, मैं निर्डा एसआरआई इंडिया के बीच, निर्डा मैप माई इंडिया के बीच, निर्डा डाटा मीट के बीच गति शक्ति के साथ समन्वय, ये एक देश को नई दिशा देगी और प्रधानमंत्री के सपनों को साकार करने में ये आज का ये कार्यक्रम एक अहम भूमिका निभाएगी। अब किसी को गांव के रास्ते भटकने नहीं पड़ेंगे किसी गूगल मैप को देखने के लिए। अब गांव में जहां जाना चाहेगा, और फिर अगर हम मनरेगा का भी डेटा उस पर यूज कर लेगा तो फिर गलियों तक का भी रास्ते एकदम मिल जाएंगे। इसके लिए मैं आज सबको धन्यवाद देता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आज इस अवसर पर भारत को आत्मनिर्भर भारत बनाने में, प्रधानमंत्री के सपनों को साकार करने में एक मील का पत्थर साबित होगा। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं अपनी वाणी को विराम देता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
अब अब मैं माननीय मंत्री महोदय श्री गिरिराज सिंह जी से निवेदन करती हूं कि कृपया रूरल कनेक्टिविटी जीआईएस डेटा का विमोचन करें। थैंक यू सर। आप सभी अतिथियों को विनम्र निवेदन है कि कृपया भोजन ग्रहण करें। भोजन ग्रहण करने के उपरांत अपराह्न 2 बजे से तकनीकी सत्र आरंभ होगा।
Hello. We'll be starting the technical session in 5 minutes. It'll be covering the details about the data set, etc. I request everyone to get seated for the technical session. We are late by 15 minutes. जो केटरिंग का स्टाफ है वो प्लीज अब क्लोज कर दीजिए लंच को एंड बाकी जो प्लेट्स वगैरह So good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting with the technical session, and the technical session is split into 3 parts. The first part, we'll have CDAC and NRIDA to give some context and history of the data collection, the context, the current uses. This will provide the necessary understanding on the strengths and weaknesses of the data sets which are being released. Then we'll have short presentations with 3 of our new partners, Esri, DataMeet, and MapMyIndia, and they'll be talking about the work which they've been doing and the work which we plan to do together. Thereafter, there'll be open discussion where we will take questions from here, but also from online. So if anyone has any questions, they can put it in the chat box in the webinar, and we can take those questions as well. So without further ado, let me invite Mr. Sajeevan Ji to the stage. He is currently the Associate Director in Emerging Solutions and eGov Group Center of Development of Advanced Computing, CDAC, a scientific society under the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Government of India. Prior to this, working with Broken Hills Industry and Center of Studies in Resource Engineering and System Research Institute. He holds an MTech in Geoexploration and MSc in Applied Geology from IIT Bombay and an MTech in Software System from BITS Pilani. I've had the privilege of working closely with him for the last 3 years for the launch of Gsy3, and he's ensured that GIS has a home in NRIDA. So, Sajeevan, please.
May I request everyone kindly please be seated. जो हॉल से बाहर हैं और NRID के ऑफिसर्स भी प्लीज अंदर आएं. I'll request everyone, because we are starting the session and this will be very knowledgeable session for you to understand. Once again, I request everyone to kindly be seated and maintain the silence so that you will enjoy the session. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we start the presentation, please? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sajeevan from CDAC Pune, and taking care of this Pmjs National GIS initiative for the last 5 to 6 years. And before that, we were also getting involved in state level initiatives, different state initiatives for the Pmjs GIS program. So our DG CDAC morning, since he has already addressed us, so I will skip it and move forward for the next PPT. Can we move forward for the next PPT, please? Next slide, please.
The web-based GIS applications and large-scale use and the proliferation of the GIS digital data within the country, the web-based
GIS and Gsy3 GIS applications caters.
That was the message from Director General of CDAC as well as the Senior Director from CDAC Pune. Now we will, due to the shortage of time, we will move for the history of the Pmjs National GIS. As our DG said, we have been involved with Pmjs for the last 20 years. I was also part of GIS initiative for Pmjs for last close to more than 20 years. And last 5 to 6 years, we have initiated a major program for Pmjs in GIS context. That is GRIS, and the second one is Gsy3. In 2015, we were having a lot of planning what to be done, because all the states were having their own applications, their own data, and people were working in silos for the Pmjs program. But there was a need to have a national level software which we can monitor, which the Pmjs could coordinate and monitor and maintain the system. So in this context, we tried to incorporate whatever our technical knowledge into the MOU between NRID and CDAC. And I will get into details. Most important thing is having a guideline and taking care of the technological upgrades, technological whatever progress at that time. So most important thing what we have done is we have done away with base maps. There were a lot of base maps incorporated. That was the time people were having incorporating base map, and a lot of data is getting stitched. And there was also a problem of interoperability, and a lot of people, a lot of agencies, a lot of companies used to make data, and even for multiple projects in the same agency itself used to make same data set again and again and again. That's a huge wastage of time and energy, and a lot of fund were wasted in that way. So what we thought is the data is more important, right? Because the software will be perishable, but the software is very important. The data is very important, the long run. So we wanted to have the data which can be reused. So the most important thing is spatial accuracy. So if you don't create the data in spatial accuracy, that cannot be used in an interoperable manner, and it cannot be used by maybe other department or another projects. So we put the guideline into that. We followed. There is no stitching. There should not be. And we made it very simple as WGS80 for us to be followed, and everyone was free to create their own way. And states were given freedom to select their own vendors, their own agencies. This was state agencies or central agencies. That's the way we proceeded. And there was only one requirement of having a GIS expert in every state. And not only that, we enforce since WGS80 for the guideline, and there was no problem of projection, because we said there should not be any projection, so that the spatial accuracy will not be lost in that. Not only that, there were a lot of changes required. We were also looking into change, like in every conference, technical people used to say, we need to have the data available to us, so there should be data available for the national development. So that was not happening, and a lot of people were over the years. So I'm so happy that the last few years, come next one, please. Can I change to the next one? Yeah. So the major change has happened in 2017 with MIT coming up with the data sharing policy in 2017, February. It seems February is a good month for us. With 2017 February, MIT is coming up with that. And draft national policy has come last year in February 2021. These policies enabled us in sharing the data. Otherwise, we were also worried about there was restrictions. Even you think of topo sheets. The topo sheets were available even in some foreign countries, but it is not available to the internal students or the people who wants to do a lot of things, because there were a lot of restrictions in getting them scanned, even sharing the data. All these, this historic day, we could do away with all these with the help of all these policies. I'm so happy we are standing in a historic day. And I am also happy that NRIDA has contributed dramatically, enormously for the National Geospatial Mission. It's a huge work on them. It is, even though I feel it is not a mandate to them, probably their mandate is constructing a lot of roads. But in the geospatial point of view, you contributed a lot of things for the national development, for the national mission. So let me give a brief introduction about GRIS. That was the thing we started in 2019. Sorry, 2015, 16 we started executing the project. All the plannings, everything has been done in 2015 itself. MOU has been signed between CDAC and NRIDA in 2015 itself. Started the implementation, and this is a huge work. We don't even imagine. A lot of involvement of all these states across the India. Everyone, a lot of teams were in conferences, workshops, and a lot of trainings. It is a huge investment by everyone. This is a site. Since it is available to all of you, you can just go there. It is open to public as well as decision makers, because decision makers can utilize this site to understand this particular WebGIS application to make out some of the queries. So right now we can see Jharkhand, in which you see the map data. You can see a lot of data in the background, which is coming directly from MIS system. So when we have the GIS system, there is only the map data within the system. The rest of the things, you think about the known attributes like the name of the districts, everything is coming live from OMMS. So this was very important point defining the success of this particular WebGIS application. And even the photographs which people are giving online, giving the quality of the road, which can also be visualized under this system, that is the mobile applications. So all these made, so there were, if I look at it, the most important thing which defined the success was the MIS GIS integration. Because normally, we used to restrict the GIS normally to a visualization platform, but it is not. But it is a huge, enormous opportunity for GIS for the national development, which you will be seeing in the rest of our presentation itself, because we contributed for the analysis, not just remaining the visualization part, but remaining in the analysis part of the geospatial information. And the most important thing is, as usual, even in way back around 20 years back, also in 2002 or something, when we implemented GRIMS, the WebGIS system for Pmjs, but it was for a pilot project. That time itself, we used to have the live integration. That's very important. Otherwise, the GIS system remain in silo without updates. So whenever we make a query because of this integration with OMMS, the information remained current and up to date. Okay, let me move forward so another one is we developed a lot of functionalities depending on their almost like a standalone software. And the most important thing which was missing was the transactions, because it was more like displaying the information, querying the system. But we needed to have the updating the maps, and I'm updating the maps online. So we moved to the online geospatial transaction system for Pmjs, which has been completely developed using free and open source software. We also had incorporated ISRO Bhuvan satellite data service that was initially. Now we have others services like OpenStreetMap, even lately we incorporated even Google, freely available Google data also, because when we say the success, it's a success as it comes from the collaboration of everyone. Can we move to the next one? This is available too. So there are a lot many modules coming under this particular WebGIS application. Most important thing, what we are having the shape files, you can upload it online and get it published automatically. So this is an authentication-based system. So there are various level of authorizations. The state users, technical agencies, administrators, they keep uploading the data. Can we go back and scan through it? So what we have, the QC reports. Previously, the QC report used to have the manual. States used to send the data to CDAC, and we used to prepare. Now everything has gone online, like a QC report, editing the data online, and creating reports and state, national reports. And most important things is extensively being used by all states right now, the proposal creation. Road contract can be created online, sitting at your place, and NRIDA or Ministry of Rural Development and sitting at their cabin, they can see what is happening, who is creating the project right now, and there is administrator. There is also a provision to data service. Right now we are giving download, but once we upgrade our system, upgrade our infrastructure in the hardware system, there will also be an option to give the data service. The software is in place in which online the APIs given to everyone, which allow them to consume the service online, like we use the trace map. I think Harsh will touch upon that. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay, this is also again a lot of, once we go into that layer, layer locking, unlocking, administrative utilities. So this is about uploading the file, admin, and generating the QC report. Visualization, we have now the Bhuvan data, ISRO Bhuvan data. I'm thankful to them. They have, from the beginning itself, they have given the service to us. We are utilizing it. And also we have OpenStreetMap, and now Google Map, as I said. And this editing can be done online. That red line is incorporated. That road was missing. Person can sit in this state and just they can incorporate whatever changes they want. Same way, there is also administrators to approve visualization, what is happening in the changes, what they are doing it over there. And most important, as I said, lively, there is more than 10,000 proposals. You can see the contract, road contract, approved through the GeoSADC, and we can visualize it online and which road has been created right now, or because it's happening and continuously getting updated. And this is the API which we are using it internally, which can be used by our MIS system, because the spatial analysis cannot be done by the MIS system. So what we are doing is the network analysis and giving the benefited habitations out of this particular road, selecting a road, and we will find out which are the habitations actually benefited by creating a particular road. This is only can be done by the GIS system, and this information will be passed on to, and the GIS system can only do that. That has been given to, and hope our data scientist, I'm closely, we are working, and he will be next to talk something about the trace maps. It has been, initially it was not possible for us to, giving in a short time of 1 month or 2 months the web-based system of network analysis and the trace map. He has run around all the states and created the trace map for all the states within initial 2 months of starting that particular Gsy3 program. So that way done it in standalone software. Now it is available with reference to this. This is the dashboard in which state is doing, how many proposals are being created, how many contracts are being created. I see only a few snaps, lot of contribution, lot of meetings, lot of online collaborations. You can say it is the work of collaboration. I should say without collaboration we cannot go together. NRIDA, states, lot many agencies, GIS industries, lot many GIS industries were involved in creating the data. NIC is giving us the that hosting services is Robo, and not only that, we should also say the OpenStreetMap, Google Map, they were also contributing the success of this particular project because we are accessing their service also online. And going ahead, I think we should have more and more collaborations by releasing the data. I think I should be happy. We will be happy if somebody start using the data and creating more jobs out of these data, like creating more jobs and making profit out of it. And with this, I conclude some of the things, spatial accuracy and other things. Whatever created, except the sharing of data, it's all based on the plannings. There are a lot many papers, articles which we have written it. It's all depending on whatever software, what we developed. It's all according to our previously planned it and come to this stage. But the data sharing has been really historic steps taken by NREA recently. With that, I conclude, and thank you all for that. Your introduction. What about your? Okay,
that's fine. Thanks, Sajeevan. Can we set up the next presentation, please? Sajeevan has been around for a long time with Pmjs and has made sure GIS found a home in Pmjs. So we'll start with the next. I'll just test whether this is working. Cool. Right. Good afternoon. I'm Harsh. I work as the lead data scientist in the Data and Insights unit at the Ministry of Rural Development. I'll be talking about the time I spent at Pmjs, the context in which the data has been collected, the attributes which we are releasing, how NRIDA has been using this data set to set the tone on what all is possible with this data, and also a little bit on the future, what we expect from the community. So largely we are releasing 4 GIS data sets, but also 2 auxiliary data sets. So the 4 GIS data sets which we are releasing are roads, which are the district rural roads, but it's not only rural roads. There are some fragments of NH, SH, MDR also, but it's largely rural roads. Habitations, which is a subunit within the village, which we'll talk about the definition of it. Rural infrastructure, which is schools, hospitals, markets, and there are 22 kinds of facilities which we are releasing, and so we'll talk about that. Gsy3 proposals. This is the most recent phase of Pmjs, and all the proposals which are being proposed go through a evidence-based process, and they are digitized before they are sanctioned, and they're scrutinized, so we have them, and we're also releasing those, the sanctioned proposals. Block boundaries. which are relevant to the data sets which we are releasing. They might not be the most latest or the most recent administrative divisions, but these are the ones which we are using at Pmjs, and location master data to make sense of which is the location district block, etc. So if we talk about roads, to get a sense of what this data set is, it's a line data set in which every line is a rural road which we've digitized over the last 20 years. The collection of data, in honesty, started in early 2000 when this was digitized in an Excel format. Pmjs started with the district rural road plans, which were early on, and many people are here who've been there from the start. And so we digitized it in an Excel format back then. And over time, the policy started having GIS included, but it was largely post facto, that once the plan has been made, we'll digitize them in GIS. Around 2015, we started making sure that the entire DRRP as it stands is brought to GIS with a unique code for every line segment, which is now culminated to this release right now in 2021. There were many roads when we were moving from Excel to GIS, which were duplicate or which were not found on the ground or ended up becoming multi-part data sets. So that all is still present in the data which we are releasing. So there will be certain line segments which will be multi-part and not single part. There are certain duplicates which are there, which we are constantly trying to remove. There are some places where the length differs, the GIS length and the administrative length. Largely all of these problems have been resolved in the last couple of years, but we are hoping with the release we'll get more feedback and we'll fix those things. The rough length of the data set being released is 25 lakh kilometers. If you look at the rural India's data set, that's about 45 lakh to 50 lakh, of which 25 lakh we are releasing. We are not saying these 25 lakh were not already available in maps by, say, Google, Esri, Map My India, but a large proportion of them are not available because we are covering the remote part of those roads. The link routes which we've ourselves created in the last couple of years. So we would say this is not the entire data set, but it fills the gap which is currently not available with most of the providers. It's a live database. As Sajeevan was saying, that it's connected to GeoSadak. So any changes which our engineers are making on this data set as new and new roads are being identified, or because of the work which we do for our day-to-day scheme, any road which is updated in GeoSadak will automatically be available for download in the website and the open data. So we would not treat this data set as a static data set, and we would be giving out monthly updates the same way OSM does on a daily basis, but we'll slow it down to a monthly basis because we're not expecting that heavy changes to it, but it'll be definitely a live database. Each of these points have been digitized separately by each state. So some states have used in-house resources, some have gone to commercial GIS providers, some have gone to their local remote sensing centers. And the coverage is dependent on the original data set which they had done in early 2000 and 2011. So if you are working with the data, you'll find that the quality differs from state to state, and so also the coverage. And there are certain states, for example, Orissa and Karnataka, where the data set's coverage is very detailed. They've covered even smaller roads within the village which go to, say, a funeral place or like other places. Whereas in other places, at least we've covered the link routes which go to the village. But you will find that the quality and the coverage will differ from each state because it has been collected in a decentralized manner. Sure, there was a standardization in the attributes and certain quality checks which were provided by CDAC, but you will still find that the quality differs to an extent across the states. So if we talk about the attributes which we are releasing right now, and we are open to releasing more attributes based on the feedback, the most important attribute with this data is ERID, which is sort of the primary key and a unique identifier of a road in our database, which also links it to all the other data sets which are open in OMAS. If you have visited OMAS, which is PMJSY's MIS system, a lot of reports are already live there, which use one of these indicators as well. So ERID is the primary key for each road. State ID, district ID, block IDs are numeric right now, and you have to connect them with the location master data, which I said is available in the beginning. And so from that, you'll be able to get the name of the district, block, and the state. DRRP road number is a number such as L185, L2, L3, or TMRL. These were the numbers which were given by the engineers when they were making the DRRP. And there's a category for MDR, SH, NH, so that you'll get from the road category column. There's a road name which generally follows the format of dash to dash via dash, which also gives you an ability to check the accuracy of the data, because it'll generally be from a particular village to another village via another village is what we've followed as a terminology. And then road ownership, which is one of, probably this is the most valuable one, but we also want to make sure that the data is not of primary use to us. So we have, we've been working on this accuracy, but this would need much more feedback from the public which is using this. But this is saying whether this road is belonging to a PWD department or an RRDA department or a BRO department. So there are various departments which build roads, and this is a way to link who's build what. And so if you see, this is a random section, and what I have is Google Maps here. And if you overlay it with the data which we are releasing. So we are drastically increasing the coverage in rural India. And this is not a cherry-picked example. I think most examples you'll pick of this data set in the rural parts. This is the coverage which we are seeing. Certain community problem statements when it comes to roads is that we are releasing a huge data set, but we ourselves know that there are certain pockets of the data set which we don't yet have. And so can we, one, be able to bring this data set to a lot of mapping providers which are also present here, but also into OpenStreetMaps, because most mapping providers already have a pipeline from OpenStreetMaps into their databases. And so if we are able to load this data set into OpenStreetMaps, that's the best way in which the entire ecosystem can get an advantage out of it. At the same time, whether we can know what data set is already out there, what are the roads which are out there but which we don't have in our database and which is limiting the quality of our planning. So if we can get that subset as well, and we can find a necessary mechanism to importing it back into Pmjs. The other things are that we are also releasing certain metadata which might be there. So the roads will be there in OSM or MapMyIndia, but the metadata which we are releasing might not be there. So it's not just about the GIS part of it, but also the attributes which we are releasing. And the last part, as I said, the ownership data is, I think, very important, because a lot of times you're on a road and you want to make a complaint, but you don't know who's the owner of this road. And you don't know as a citizen where the road starts and where the road ends. And so the ownership data combined with the GIS data which we are releasing could drastically improve the accountability measures with the in rural roads or in roads in general. The next is habitations. So what is an habitation? So Pmjs early on from its policy has depended on habitations and not revenue villages. A lot of people make this mistake when they're also referring to data which is available publicly. So habitations are not revenue villages. In fact, they're subunits within revenue villages. So a habitation is a cluster of dwellings in an area. It can be a tola, etc., or a location where people have been there for a while. So there are various names to which dhanis, Majras, Hamlets, Desam. So these are all what we mean by habitation. And that is the data set which we are releasing. And hence, when we are saying that 10 lakh habitations are being released, we only have about 6 lakh revenue villages. So this is something which goes much more granular than the village level. Again, the context of habitations was Pmjs from the early beginning decided that they will be focusing on habitations from Pmjs 1 in early 2000 and not on villages, that we'll make sure that the village habitations are connected by a road. And so this is the data. It started building in 2000. It was once more updated in 2011 with the new population, but largely the base stands from early 2000s. Similarly, it was earlier Excel and now it has been brought to GIS. About 10 lakh right now. We ourselves know, we've been very closely using this data for the last couple of years. There are still hamlets which are not here. And so while we are increasing the coverage, there are still hamlets which are not here, and we can find out avenues. We can use machine learning on satellite imagery, satellite data, other things to make sure that the hamlets which are not right now in our database are also added. It's a live database, so we are hoping that it will also improve over time with the same process which we have for Gsy3 with our engineers, and especially in the near future, we'll be focusing more on these habitations. Similar to the roads, this has been digitized separately by the states, and so the coverage you'll find is separate. So there are certain states which eventually in 2011 decided they no longer want to work at the habitation level, and so the data released is actually of villages for certain areas and certain states. But for largely most of India, you'll find habitations have been released. Similarly, the standardization and attributes and the quality check were done by CDAC, and the coverage varies. So the attribute state district block is same. The unique key is habitation ID, which is being released for each habitation. Along with, we have an habitation name and a habitation population. Now, the population one is an estimate made by an engineer based on the 2011 revenue village, because we don't have the population of the tola. We are going there and identifying the tolas ourselves. So the engineer on the ground uses his best knowledge, takes the village population and splits it proportionately. And so any use of this data should be bearing in mind the assumption in which this data was collected. Moving on to Pmjs3 facilities. This is the recent most data set which we've collected. So starting 2019, end of 2019 to the most of 2020, this data set was collected at different times for different states. Actually, yeah, before that, I'm sorry, the community problem statements linked to habitations, something which we could really benefit, and I think Esri and MapMan India both can solve this problem for us, is if we are able to link the habitations back to the revenue village. We've been able to digitize all the habitations, but if we are able to do a spatial join with the revenue villages, if you have that kind of data, we'll be able to add the metadata of the villages to the habitations, thereby linking it to all the other work which is done around revenue villages. The second is identifying habitations which are not in our data set, which I spoke about. It can be in OSM already or in your data sets, or we can get them through alternate data sources. But largely habitation, I think, is a game changer when it comes to analyzing benefits. We've been trying to map whether a particular village has been gotten a benefit, but within a village, if it is broken down into tola, we can now even check whether all different tolas have gotten a benefit, because generally these tolas within a village are also split on socio-economic factors. So we can now do a monitoring at a tola level. Coming to rural infrastructure, as I said, most recent data set, it was collected through an app. And in which engineers on the ground went and clicked photographs of the rural facilities. And while clicking that photograph, we were also geotagging the photograph, and that is the source of this data set. We have also, while collecting the photograph, asked them to find out, link it to the nearest habitation. So you'll have the nearest habitation linked as an attribute, but the lat long is where the photo was clicked. I'll talk about the facilities in the next slide. We have, I think now 8 lakh facilities which have been released. This is largely a static data. We're not updating it now because these were used for Pmjs3 planning. The surveyors are not trained surveyors. These are civil field engineers who did this or contracted staff. So there can be certain mistakes in definition reading, or there can be certain areas which were not digitized. And so it shouldn't be used as a universal data set. These are the only schools or these are the only hospitals. It's a fixed period exercise. Interpretations of definitions vary from state to state. Certain states decided that they wanted to survey government schools and private schools, whereas most other states decided that they'll only survey government schools. So that level of decentralization and flexibility was provided to the states to decide what kind of facilities are important for them. The attributes state district block are the same. HAB ID is the one which they've linked manually. So it could be the HAB ID is far away, but this is what they think this facility belongs to. Facility ID is the unique facility ID, description is name of the bus stand, category is transport admin, and then a subcategory is bus stand. So these are being released. And these are all the facilities which we've released. So we have in agro, mandi, grams, warehouses, cold storages, sugar mills, agro industries, which is more of a flexible definition. Then we have high schools, general high school girls, ITIs, degree colleges, higher secondary schools. In medical, we have primary health centers. We have veterinary hospitals, bedded hospitals, community health centers. Then in transport and admin, we have bus stand, fuel stations, banks, block headquarters, and panchayat headquarters. So it generally covers a large amount of rural economy and rural life, from admin to schools, hospitals, and markets. Is this on in the webinar, or should I stop? All right, so the next data set is the Pmjs3 proposals. These are the proposals, and these are part of the whole Pmjs3 planning process and the proposals which we've sanctioned. So Pmjs3, the context is, it was a scheme which was formally launched in 2018 and in implementation in 2019. And the idea was upgradation of existing rural road networks, which help people go to school, hospitals, and markets. And so that was the broad ambit of the scheme. And a detailed ambit of the scheme can be seen from the guidelines document, which is also linked below in the presentation. So the scheme had an overall target of 1,25,000 kilometers. It's an ongoing scheme, and there are roads which are still getting sanctioned. As of now, we've sanctioned more than 70,000 kilometers. And so you will find the alignments of these proposals right now released, the ones which we have already sanctioned. And within that, there'll be some which we are not released yet because the state is still approving them, the GIS alignment. These are the ones which were sanctioned before the launch of GeoSadak. So these proposals, the method in which this is drawn is, again, point and click and drag. So in GeoSadak, the whole idea of GeoSadak was that you don't need GIS expertise to be able to do this, and it was designed so that our civil engineers can use it. So they log in into the system, they decide the proposal which they want to propose, the satellite imagery opens up, and they can use their mouse and trace it, and that's the proposal, and they submit it. It goes through a maker-checker mechanism before coming to NRIDA, where it gets scrutinized before getting sanctioned. And so I think to get a sense of how this data set is collected and the kind of accuracy you should expect, I think there's a small clip in which you'll see a field engineer is actually drawing a, actually it didn't come complete, I think the video, but the idea is that you take a mouse and then there's satellite imagery and then you just click, 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 and the line comes, and that's the proposal, and that's what the field engineer on the ground is submitting. The attributes which are being released with this data set is the state, district, block, habitation ID, the MRL ID, which is the unique for the candidate road which is being proposed, the CN code. These are the ones which we will link with the OMAS data sets which are being released on the OMAS website. The length of the proposal, the name of the work, the year in which this was sanctioned, and the batch in which this was sanctioned. And so this is the information which we are launching. Rest of the information has been public for years on the OMAS website, which is where you could do the linking. And one quick disclaimer, these are the roads which have been sanctioned. If you go on the ground right now and try to find these roads, you won't find them in a constructed manner instantly, because first they have to get tendered and there's this whole process. And so you can get a sense of at which state this, which stage this road is by going to OMAS, while before we do the necessary addition of attributes here. But these are the proposals which we have sanctioned. And so in due time, these are the ones which will get upgraded and constructed on ground. Block boundaries being released, this does not need a lot of definition. The only disclaimer I'll give here is that Pmjs does not follow always the block boundaries in time. For example, if a block has been split right now, as of yesterday, we will have to do the necessary process of moving one work from here to another block in our IT system, etc. So our block boundaries or the divisions usually lag from what is being done online, which is true for every government IT system, because we have to move a lot of stuff in the processes before we are able to move it. Next is the location master data. This is more meta information. For every attribute which has been, every shapefile which we are releasing, we have the state ID, block ID, district ID. And so these are the ones which we have released. Current users of the data, to set a context on what we've been using this heavily as early adopters for the last 3 years. With the launch of Gsy3, for example, we had a target of selecting 1,25,000 kilometers, but we had an overall pool of 45 lakh, 50 lakh kilometers. So how do you decide which road is the one which helps the most people go to school, hospital, and markets? And there's not enough road use data, right? If you go to a city, you'll find road use data from Google or from other places, but how do you do it for rural India for 45 lakh kilometers? So we automated something which has always been there in civil engineering, origin destination mapping, and something which you would do manually, but we've created our own algorithm which goes from every habitation to the nearest school, hospital, and market, and repeats this for all 10 lakh habitations in the country. And then it uses this information to combine across all roads to identify which road is being used by how many people, such that if this road breaks down, the most number of people will get impacted in their access to school, hospitals, and markets. So we've been using this successfully in Pmjs3 as a way of network optimization. We think that the community can improve this algorithm further to cater to all kinds of traffic. We've catered to what the policy objective is of school, hospitals, and markets. And so we heavily used QGIS and all open source solutions available on making this, and the entire algorithm was written in-house. So here you can see that the algorithm is being run for a particular block in Madhya Pradesh, I think Fanda block. And so you give all the data we are releasing right now. That's all the data which this needs as an input. And as an output, it creates these maps which field engineers on the ground can use as guidance as to these roads might be useful for going to schools, hospitals, and markets. Because you always have a general idea of which road is the most important. But if that road is already in a good condition, how do you decide the second road or the third road or the fourth road? Especially if you've recently been transferred to this area, or if you only want to focus on school hospital traffic and not, say, mining traffic or industrial traffic. So this is one use we've had. The other use is GeoSadak, which I won't go into much details, but I think the guiding part of GeoSadak was that we digitized the data, but we wanted to make sure that it's always updated. And we didn't want to rely only on GIS experts. So the system is made such that any civil engineer without any GIS training can just log in, or even the leadership at NRIDA can just log in and look at any proposal they want, or they can draw a proposal and submit. So the idea behind GeoSadak is how to embed GIS into our day-to-day decision making and not just leave it as a post-facto activity which the GIS people are doing and has nothing to do with the program. And so also along with that we've introduced the GIS and everything, but it was followed up with the leadership's help with using in policy. So while we were asking everyone to draw the proposals, it wouldn't make sense unless we started using it. So NRID introduced a special unit and a special stage, which is the planning audits, in which the roads which are being proposed get scrutinized on satellite imagery with all the data which we've collected, whether it is actually helping people go to school, hospital, and markets. Because before that, anyone would just write a paragraph that this is helping 15,000 people, it's going from here and there. But you can actually look at this proposal on GeoSadak and check whether the description of the road actually matches, and this has been now an institutionalized process, and it has led to a lot of roads being also rejected, which were not really useful or not serving a lot of people or not meeting our objectives, and also an overall focus on selecting the most optimum routes in terms of the policy. And so the open call now is to all the researchers, civil society, industry, startups, how can we find different innovative uses of this data set? But also an open problem is how do we establish a feedback loop? Because we've released the data, but how do we get a sense of what is the misgivings in the data? What are the coverage issues? How do we find an institutional mechanism to get this data back? Like if there are 10 roads which are not in our data set, how do we get it? I think that's where MapMyIndia, Esri, OSM, these players can play a huge role so that we create a feedback loop and this does not become like a one-way, one-time release. Because there'll be upcoming schemes possibly on this data set, and the decisions which we make depend on this data. And so if there are certain bridges which are not there, we might not be able to serve. So I think it helps in having a feedback loop. Also, we'll be happy for everyone who's joined online as well. If they use the data to do something interesting while we launch the hackathon, they can tag one of these handles which NRIDA has, and they can use one of these hashtags so that we also get a sense of the value this data is creating, and it helps the ministry also do future such endeavors. I'd like to stop with a slide on gratitude. A lot of us were here when the data was being collected, and a lot of effort has gone from field engineers who've traveled kilometers and kilometers to click photographs and to digitize everything. So gratitude to all the engineers who this was not their primary activity, but they've been able to do this and create this data set, which we don't want to just use once in Pmjs3, hence the release. To the GIS professionals over since 2014 who've been digitizing all the roads, hospitals, all the roads and habitations. The state ITNO, some of them who are here who were pushed into GIS much later in the career when they were happy with the tools which they knew, but very happily and actively led the transformation of Pmjs at the state level, and CDAC Pune for obviously all the technical support. Thanks. If anyone has any questions from the online, people who've joined online, you can add those questions in the chat, and we'll be able to take them in the end in the open discussions. All right, thanks. Oh, I'll just come there, I'll take your question. The next presentation, we have to kick off the partner presentations. We have Mr. Dwaipayan Diggle, Industry Head, Rural Development at Esri, India. He's a seasoned geospatial professional with over 22 years of industry experience in Indian geospatial domain. He must be feeling home as he's also a civil engineer with road engineering specialization and leads Gsy3 India's initiative in rural roads domain. He'll be talking about the work Gsy3 does and the collaboration which we'll be having. Thanks.
May I request? Thank you. Thank you. I think it's probably a historic moment for us who started our career in geospatial industry, and also for probably the Gsy3 India. This year we are celebrating our 25-year existence in India. I never came across this kind of initiative where the government is basically giving the data to the industry so that industry can come up with very innovative solutions. We were looking for it, this kind of changes, so that, the technology which we did design, develop for the last 50 years, it has no meaning unless until it is pumped by the data. The data is basically the fuel. And I have been present with my entire leadership team here, who has come to witness this thing. Many of our R&D team is also joined online. I'll take very short presentation and what is probably we think in a future research we can do it on with the help of this data and where we as an Gsy3 can value add. Gsy3, I hope this, yeah. So Gsy3 probably if we are in a GIS organization. GIS is our bread and butter. We formed way back in US, but then India unit set up around 26 years back. We are present in any mission mode projects which government carry out for these last 25 years, whether it is in civil domain, whether it is a defense domain, or whether it is in public safety domain. We have served almost more than 5,000 government customers and public sector units as well as private organizations who has benefited with this data and which basically making use of the data. I mean, the creation of the data is one component. I think making use of the data is another component. And one of the stats which we take very, very proudly and we say it again and again, we invest, this is the highest standard in our industry, that we invest 30% of our revenue into the R&D. So that's kind of a benchmark we set up in the industry where we invest and reinvest our revenue 30% in our R&D. So that's basically pump the last 50 years of journey into the GIS globally. ArcGIS is a product which we developed and marketed. It's an open platform. That means that it can hook onto any kind of systems, whether it's a software systems, whether it is in data systems, whether it is an API systems, or whether it is any kind of sensor. So that means you can make a sense out of the data. That's what the system is built on. It's an open system. That's why we made the system is open. And I think that's what you can see the beauty of it when it's get pumped with all this data which you have created for the last 15 years of the various roads of the kind of a presentation which Harsh shows. And I'm following Harsh for a few times of his work on some of the innovative things. And I think that's where we can probably able to give a value addition on that. The rural road which we feel, and which I was discussing with my managing director Agendra, who is present there, is basically as I think a lot of people said, it's like an artery, and we involve into various rural projects. We involve heavily into the Swamitra project, which is I think the common projects here. I personally look after the Swamitra project, and I'm traveling across India from a length and breadth on this project, and I can visualize how closely the Swamitra, which is basically giving the ownership of the property to that where there is no property document currently, how it can benefit if it is connected with the rural roads and the POIs which basically you are connecting. That's what the beauty of the data comes. Data doesn't have any value if it is reside in a silos. Data has to be connected with a multiple ministry, and that's why we as technocrats come into place to give that platform where various kind of data can be ingested and making sense out of that. This is probably one of the ministry where GIS is used as a mainstream subject. I mean, whether it's a Pmjs 1 when the CEDAC came up, and I think Dr. Sanjeevan is there, and a lot of people doesn't know. Let me tell you very honestly, and I'll like to make that statement. A lot of people doesn't know how deep the GIS into this particular project. So when we discuss with them, they're really amazed. How the approval system, mechanism, rejections, and all these kind of things are done by the GIS, which even some of the ministry probably envy of. And that's why we need to talk a lot about it, so that people know how closely the GIS is used into this particular project. The collaborations were, I think, which we can see and which we'll like to do that. Maybe there is a small video if it runs. Okay, yeah. So we have a concept called Living Atlas. It is probably one of the largest repository of the geospatial data. We have various tie-up with the governments. If it doesn't play, yeah, it's playing. Thanks. So this is called Living Atlas. So this has a lot of data of Indian data. We have tie-up with Survey of India. We have tie-up with sensors. So all the demographic government-produced data are available into this platform. A lot of NGOs create the data. A lot of universities create the data. So these data we host it from the platform, and that's why when you build an application, these all data can be come into the handy into that. And the weather information, the rainfall information, I can go on talking about the different kind of data which we have for India as well as the global context. And this, I think, will be the rural road will be one of the set of data which the entire user community of the GIS will be able to take the benefit out of it. Another area, I think we have seen what is the benefit of the geotag, and I think which is going in our next session domain is using the machine learning or the deep learning into the various kind of videos-based monitoring, which will basically monitor your entire road construction qualities or anything on the roads which we have built, which we have digitized. And so some of that, it's basically you can literally have a vehicle or a bike-based video monitoring, which will automatically trace back the issues on your existing GIS data. Some of the small videos are pretty. So that's what it picks up, whether it's a dash cam, whether it's a mobile videos or any kind of things. It's basically using the deep learning to find out the issues on the roads. Next area, I think, which you have a lot of culverts and a lot of roads across India, length and breadth. And I think the kind of push government is taking with the drone policies and kind of opening up the whole industry into the drone. I think that's what, we can come in as giving a value provider, or how centralized way you can monitor the drones, how these data which you are publishing here, that can be used to monitor or fly the drones so that it can go to that particular area, find out some photographs or the videographs, and then you pump up all these deep learning tools to find out the issues of the particular culverts or particular road section before going into the further process. So this is an area which we will be working on, part of this MOU. And I think the whole data engineering, you have a lot of data. The whole data engineering, the data science domain, which ESRI is working not only in India but globally, and some of the screenshots of making the visual component of the data. That's what we will be working part of the MOU. And I'm happy to announce, and we will be probably closely working with the Pmjs and NRI team onto that, so that these kind of things or analytics we can build, which will be beneficial of that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks a lot for that presentation. Next, we have Mr. Nikhil Kumar, President Geospatial Business at MapMy India, which is India's homegrown mapping giant, which also recently went public. Mr. Nikhil Kumar has been in the geospatial industry for the last 25 years. He's directly responsible for strategic initiatives and growth of MapMy India's products and services in India and abroad. He's actively engaged with various geospatial industry associations, such as he's the Vice President of AGI, and also the co-chair of the FICCI Committee on Geospatial Technologies. He'll be presenting on empowering rural mobility through geospatial technologies. So can we have Mr. Nikhil Kumar, please?
Good afternoon. So we had very fascinating presentations. And since we are talking here in the importance of data, and I will not talk about technology. I will only talk about a few very basic things, starting with how the value of geospatial collective investment gets accentuated. I never believe in creating everything by one company or one organization. So the collective geospatial investment makes a lot of sense. and how by you create data, but the importance of the data gets accentuated if you create more data or you combine that data with more data. So the first part I will talk about the value of integration. The second part, he spoke about feedback loop. That's a very important part, and how MapMyIndia can help in creating that feedback loop, or I will say self-healing, which is how by deploying AI tools, you are able to diagnose the gaps and also write programs so that majority of those problems can get self-healed. So I will talk about that part. The third part is you need a backhaul. When we are talking of data, finally these data requires to be integrated into different applications. And how a pervasive system is there, or a backhaul is there, which is allowing that dissemination, not only as an API, as a data API, but also into different applications. The fourth part, which is, should we have readily available web or mobile tools where these data find a home and automatically creates value for businesses, citizens, and government. So I will talk about this 5 different aspects. So MapMyIndia, as a company, we take pride in creating digital representation of the physical world. So I will go with one video. So I talked about that we take pride in creating the digital representation of the physical world. So we have all 2D, 3D, 4D, and real-time database available. And through this MOU, what we would like to do is to take it to the next level, where we actually bring in different participations, whether it is citizen engagement, whether it is public health. And that is the value that we can accentuate. What we have been doing so far in the urban locality can be actually extended in the rural localities. And the 4 parts that we talked about in kind of integrating a lot of POIs data set of the rural economy based ecosystem, we can integrate that on our backhaul based system, which is not limited to the maps itself, but the multiple facets of the network intelligence that we bring in onto the system. For instance, if somebody wants to know, I mean, not only from the perspective of the rural dynamics, but how can we extend the entire intelligence into system right from the block to subdivision to district to the state as a whole. Now that backhaul information, if it's kind of overlaid on top of this enormous data set that we have released today, that actually gets a lot of accentuated value. So So that go into the intelligent transportation system, into the entire aspect of rural development, and can find a huge value chain in the entire agriculture tech stack. Now, this is a great work that NRIDA has created. And what we want to do now further, we will show you a few things that when we talk about the whole geospatial system, right from acquiring to ingesting to map matching and the whole pipeline that he was talking about, and then extending into different forms of application, be it a web-based application or mobile-based application, we will try to use this data and extend that enormous value by bringing beneath our data set. You will see suddenly not only limited to seeing it on the system, but the way the intrusion of smartphone is happening into the rural sector, people will find a lot of real-time application using our data sets on top of it, and it's already released. So if you see Maple app, which is the entire navigation app, will find a lot of value once we actually create this data set on top of our data set as an SDK extend that, which is already available. So what I was talking about, the backhaul infra, it's not only limited to creating this additional layer on top of the existing layer, but also able to sustain the load that it might tomorrow come up from millions of use cases. So that system, as a MapMyIndia, we bring in on the table in terms of the value accentuation. Yeah, so we will also show you that the data set that we just got it, how we have easily brought that into our platform. And the pipeline, which actually is able to ingest and enrich your layer on top of our layer, and then extend that. So these are the few things that we were kind of showing your data set on top of our data set. All the layers already there, and beneath that you are seeing our data set. That will also give you the gap analysis and how can collectively we fill the gaps. This is the Maple application that I was talking about, already there in the public domain. And the testimony of its load and how can it endure millions of hits was actually proved during the COVID time, because all the COVID map was MapMyIndia app, and millions of hits were there, and not for even once the system went down. So that's the backhaul platform that I was talking about. Not the ability to give functions and functionality, but able to provide the entire platform and endure that. So we can integrate various facility data in one of the rural application that we already worked with, whether where is the mandi, where is the medicine near me. So all our POIs, which runs into millions, into exact point addresses, that can get integrated on the network data and the facility data that you have provided, and then we can create this intelligent network on top of it into the mobile app as well. These are some of the high-level things. I will not go deep, which is what I was talking about. We have already done that with various different government organizations sharing their data, or we collecting for them and then integrating that with our applications and platform. Some of these, MOU that we have with MORTH, there is one video.
Accident-prone area in 493 meters ahead. Right left.
So
potholes in 249 meters ahead.
So these are all integrated, and the minister was talking about extending that enormous use case of rural navigation, not by just connecting dots, but also providing the navigable attributes, which actually says, oh, you have to go to left or right, and where would you find what at what distance and what time. All that can be directly integrated into an application and extended. It's not a research. It can be done in weeks and not months and years. I was talking about the COVID. So that's it. Towards end, what I will say is that we will be able to integrate these data set and try to create something which is already available today in the urban areas, gradually in phases, and we will have the semblance of that right from now that we will have into our applications and the platform from the rural side as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the great presentation. And next we have virtually with us, we have Tejesh GN, the chairman of Data Meet. He'll be talking about Data Meet, what it takes to create an open data community in India and give context to the movement. Data Meet and NRIDA will be working together in making sure that the data set released today are made accessible to the community, and also in understanding how this data can be ported into OpenStreetMaps, which is also like the Wikipedia of maps. So can we have the recorded presentation from Tejesh?
Good afternoon, dignitaries, colleagues, and my fellow open data community members. Thank you for having Data Meet here. I'm Tejesh GN. I represent Data Meet community. Data Meet is a community of open data science and open data enthusiasts from India. We are India's biggest open data community with nearly 3,000 members participating and contributing to the cause of opening data for innovation, economic growth, for transparency, public service, and better research. Today, I'm going to speak about people's participation in opening up the data for education and research through communities like Data Meet and more. Open data stands on the shoulders of giants like RTI Act, especially the section 41B of the RTI Act, which says, and I quote, "It shall be a constant endeavor of every public authority to take steps in accordance with the requirements of Clause B of subsection 1 to provide as much information suo motu to the public at regular intervals through various means of communication, including the internet, so the public have minimum resort to use this act to obtain the information." Friends, this is the basis of open data movement in India. Later, this cause was strengthened by various governments by policies like NDSAP, National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy, whose goal is to liberate the large volumes of data collected, for example, the one which we are releasing now, and similar to many other data set which were released before, and to release such large volumes of data collected and collated by various government departments in a standard format for economic and public good. And there was another policy of GODL, which is Government Open Data License, a standard license for government data to make sure all users have the same and permanent right to use the data for economic use or for public good. It also makes sure the data is presented with all the attributions to the source. And various other initiatives like Open Government Data Platform, for example, data.gov.in, or other various state level platforms that struggle and provide data in open and standardized formats. In parallel to these government efforts, communities like OpenStreetMaps, Data Meet, Wikidata have also been working to make data accessible and available. These communities have no financial interest. They exist to serve the larger community, which includes entrepreneurs, startups, organizations working on the field, sometimes even the government departments. Since I largely work with Data Meet community, I focus on that, but various members of this community have participated and contributed data as part of other example communities that I've mentioned. So it kind of encompasses experience of all of the community. Since 26 Jan 2011, when DataMeet was born, its main goal has been to liberate the data stuck in various kinds of file formats, like PDF files or image files, etc. Most of our work has been online collaborative work, digitizing data, sharing it with the rest of the community under open data licenses, and sometimes even including open source code which was used to clean up this data. The community has grown slowly over the decade to include researchers, teachers, entrepreneurs, machine learning, and other computer science engineers. Initially, it was just few volunteers who were just engineers. Now it encompasses various other kinds of folks. The members are also participated and contributed to crowdsourcing, collecting, cleaning of GIS data, not just scraping or cleaning up the PDF files and stuff. We have also collected and cleaned up the GIS data. Today we have probably one of the largest data sets or community contributed data sets in India. The goal of DataMeet has been also to educate and build talent required to use this open data and to support open data cause. Since 2011, DataMeet has been running various meetups in multiple cities across India to bring together the community members, to train them, to run workshops, and to share data as well. Open data camps are yearly conference and hackathons that DataMeet community does to bring larger community together from all over India to share the knowledge, to share the work that they've been doing over the year, and to inspire others to participate. This is besides the continuous contribution by the community towards knowledge sharing by answering questions online, or making videos, sharing live code examples, conducting live workshops, and just to build a community on DataMeet email list where actually the whole community comes together and supports each other. DataMeet also has been a trusted partner, has participated in pre-budget consultations of Finance Ministry promoting open data and liberating various data sets within the government, and also has sent many recommendations to data.gov.in, including the recommendations on file formats for GIS data or other data sets, on licensing terms, many other issues that come along when you are trying to open up the larger data sets. DataMeet also has supported various institutions that work on the field during natural disasters by supporting them with data sets, maps, etc. DataMeet is glad to be here to be part of this endeavor by MORD. A DataMeet community and I are glad to have this data in the public domain. Thank you, MORD, and the team involved in this path-breaking step. DataMeet will continue to work with a larger community to make this data released as part of this event accessible by building and sharing knowledge base, by supporting larger community who wants to use this data, and also to ensure that this data set reaches its full potential. For any feedback and comments, you can reach me at tej@datameet.org, or you could use the contact form on the website. On this occasion, I also invite you to join our community and contribute and support everyone. Again, thanks MORD, thanks everyone involved with this move. It's historical, and we will try our best to make sure that this data set reaches its full potential. Thank you again. Good afternoon and bye.
Thank you, Tejesh. Next, we have one of our government partners, Gsy3. They'll be joining us online. We have from Gsy3 Dr. Jivisha Joshi, IRTS, who's the Deputy Secretary and the Nodal Officer for PM Gsy3, and she'll be joining online and talking a little bit about Gsy3 and the collaboration.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible.
You are, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'll just request you to kindly share the PPT. Good afternoon, everyone, and I had a wonderful time listening to all the presentations which have been made till now. As you all are aware, that PM Gati Shakti is right now an important project which we are handling, and which basically talks about a different kind of integrated approach of how to have an integrated planning, how to focus on multimodal development of infrastructure in our country, and in this regard, I would just give you a small brief presentation as to PM Gati Shakti is all about and what we have done till now. I'll just request you to kindly share. Thank you so much. Next, please. So when we look at the objectives and benefit of PM Gati Shakti, it talks about improvement in infrastructure. We must be aware that a lot of investment has been happening when we look at the infrastructural side, but all of them have happened in silos. So we have a lot of work going on, whether it's Ministry of Road Transportation, whether it's Railway, Civil Aviation, all of them are working, but most of them have been working in silos. And when we talk about PM, we are talking about improvement in infrastructure in an integrated manner. You want to have seamless movement of people, goods, and services and minimize disruption, which will lead to ease of living. And in turn, all this will lead to increase in the logistic efficiency and reduction in the logistic cost. As has been quoted a lot of time that India as a country is having logistic cost on a higher side. Our goal is to achieve at least a reduction of around 5% in the present logistic cost. The benefits are multifold. Obviously, it's going to be beneficial to the customers because there will be reduced cost, farmers to have better realization of their agriculture produce, youth because whenever there is a capital expenditure on infrastructure project, the employment opportunities are many. And business, yes, once we are going to have integrated development, we will be able to attract more business. There will be increased competitiveness. Next, please. When we look at the sectors which are involved, so basically we can divide things into two sectors. One is economic zones and second is the infrastructural linkages. When we talk about the infrastructure linkages, we are covering almost all the infrastructural ministries of our country, whether it's highway, railways, port and shipping, airports. We are also talking about gas grid, power transmission, Department of Technology. And the economic zones, we are addressing food, agri, fishing cluster, defense, electronic park, textile, pharmaceutical park, industrial corridor. And this is just an indicative list. When we talk about the economic zones or any kind of infrastructure linkages, basically we are talking about almost everything. And whichever is an important economic zone or economic activity, all of them can be added and become a part of the PM Gati Shakti initiative. Next, please. Just to give an over idea of what we are doing, we have something called as Empowered Group of Secretary, which is already operationalized and it is headed by Cabinet Secretary. And there are almost 19 secretaries who are under Empowered Group of Secretaries. Then we have something called as Network Planning Group. This consists of the planning head of all the major infrastructural ministries and department. They're supposed to examine all the proposals which will come to us, and we'll be seeing whether whenever there is any project, if it is more than 500 crore rupees, or otherwise if it has a multimodal component, then all the planning has been done comprehensively in the integrated manner or not. And we have BISEC N, who is a technological partner. So they have developed something called as National Master Plan. All the projects have been mapped on National Master Plan, and you're supposed to do all your planning using National Master Plan. Third is something called as technical support unit, which will be having a domain expertise. So we will be having people called as subject matter experts and some young professional assisting them. All of them will be assisting the logistic division in DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And this is basically going to aid and assist in the appraisal of the projects. Now, guiding principles for appraisal by NPG is to impact logistic efficiency. As I've already mentioned, the integrated approach to planning, utility for economic cluster, proactive identification of critical project, which have not even been recommended, but if anyone thinks is useful from PM Gati Shakti perspective. Next, please. We are very cautious that we don't end up adding another layer or make the process very cumbersome. So it's a very simple process. Just to give you an idea, is whenever a DPR is being made, it is supposed to be prepared on National Master Plan. The scrutiny will be done by the Planning Division of Ministry to ensure that they are in consonance with PM Gati Shakti principle. NPG will be doing the appraisal, then they'll be recommending the suggestions. Next, please. How are we identifying critical projects? We have something called as leads reports, that is logistic ease across different states. The report is being released by Ministry of Commerce and Industry Logistic Division, where we have got a lot of recommendations from various stakeholders. So basically, this report is the outcome of questionnaire which is circulated at national level with all the logistic players, and they give us various recommendation inputs on the kind of logistic infrastructure which is available in a particular state, up to 3 states, and all those recommendation has been collated and formed into leads report for ranking of state. These recommendations and the inputs given by the stakeholders will again be used in the identification of criticality of any project. Second is the input from central ministries and state government, which we have already written and asked from. And third is from the industry association and user feedback. So we are open to any industry who want to bring to our notice any kind of project which requires the multimodal connectivity or which they think is not happening in an integrated manner. So we'll be attending to them as well. Now, when we talk about role of BISAC N, they are mapping all the data input geospatially for various ministry and department. They are developing various planning, review, and monitoring tool. So PM Gati Shakti involves integrated planning, and it also has got analytical tool, and we will be coming up with a monitoring procedure. So we'll be conducting, and we are conducting various workshops and training sessions for stakeholders. We are interacting with all the state central ministries, all the states, and we have also started looking into the interaction with the private industrial sector, where we can give them an overlook of what National Master Plan is and have a consultation with them on how best we can have DPR preparation using National Master Plan. The platform is right now not open to private users with login ID credentials because it's an OTP based system, but we are working towards it and it is on our mind. We will be coming out with a guide with some guidelines and we'll be opening it to others in some time. So we are having all the stakeholders and associating with them, and we are regularly having updation of our National Master Plan. The data is dynamic and it keeps on happening. So we have direct consultation with the respective ministries whose data have been mapped. Just to give you an idea, we have more than 400 layers almost available on National Master Plan as of now. Next, please. So we are also conducting zonal conferences. So we divided the whole nation into 6 zones, and we are already done with 5 zonal conferences. Only Northeast zonal conference is left, which is to be done on 28th. And the objective is basically to sensitize the states to have a hands-on experience, because the people from BISAC also travel to the particular state, and since all the officers from the nominated zones are present that day, they get some hands-on on what National Master Plan is, how it is going to work, how it is going to be useful for them to facilitate the an identification of last mile connectivity infrastructure. If they think that their state needs any particular kind of tool, if their state has any particular complexity which has not been checked yet, then all that can be updated on National Master Plan. Next, please. Just to give you an illustration of how National Master Plan is being used, this is just next, please. So I'll just give you this example of recently how Gujarat wanted to do a planning for a coastal corridor, and they wanted to connect all the tourist places, Dandi, Ubatithal and all. And this coastal corridor was around 300 kilometers passing through 4 districts. But they were very particular that they didn't want to, next please, they didn't want to infringe on, and they want that they are very well connected. So connectivity should be there with railways, roadways, airport, ports, and they wanted to avoid any forest, geographical, land or any sensitive area which can lead to problem in the clearance and all. So they wanted to map it properly. Next, please. Yeah, next is just showing the headquarter on National Master Plan, the proposal. So this is the level. You can see that national highway, state highway, district roads, everything can be seen. Next, please. Yeah, and these were the district headquarter, the lines, the railway, the airports. Next, please. Yeah, this is the, so yeah, I think you can, yeah, you can stop sharing the screen. Thank you. So what we did was that once we were able to decide that we wanted this corridor to be planned in a particular manner, when we checked it on the National Master Plan, we were able to correct the alignment completely. And now we have been able to achieve a perfect planning a perfect alignment for a particular corridor without actually going through the long exercise which is done in a conventional manner. So this is just an example of how National Master Plan can be used. Another example is that while railway was having a plan done for their coastal railway corridor towards the eastern side, when they came up with a repair, their alignment, when they checked it on the National Master Plan, they were able to see that their alignment was going through the mining area, it was going through the forest, it was going to eco-sensitive area and everything. And the moment they were able to plot it on the National Master Plan, in just there and then only they were able to see that the alignment is not correct and how they need to actually tweak it and make it properly. So these are the few examples of how National Master Plan can be used for planning. Another is, to give you an example, is Department of Telecom has been able to map all their towers and locations and optical fiber on the National Master Plan. So now, if you want to have any kind of planning, if you want to check the connectivity for a particular village, taluka area, you are aware that which is the nearest tower which is available. You are aware where is the nearest OFC cable which is available, and thus it will help you in more efficient planning. So these are the examples from my side and a very brief presentation on what PM Gati Shakti is all about and what is National Master Plan all about. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please do let me know.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Javisha Joshi ma'am, for the presentation. And so now we come close, we are closing the presentations and we'll open the floor for any open questions if we have, and also take questions from the webinar chat if they've been taken. So if anyone has any questions.
Harsh, if anybody wants to download this data, what we have released today, where to get it from?
Right. So it's openly available as of now. If you go to geosadak-pmjsy.nic.in, and on the home page itself, you'll find an open data ticker on the top right. Otherwise, it's the website's URL/open data. And from there, you can download it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm T.C. Demole, Technical Advisor from Arunachal. Actually, there are three observations are there. Number one, in fact, I'm talking of the hill areas. When we are doing, particularly we did the habitations, we did both X and Y, latitude, longitude. We should also add the coordinate Z. Z is very important. When we do Z coordinate, it will help us for planning purpose. Lot of things. Just like earlier, what we have been doing, we are generating the DEM. When we generate the DEM, and that DEM model we have been using for purpose of the planning purpose, particularly road designing I'm talking. Now, like somebody was talking about the topo sheets, the topo sheets were not available, particularly the state like Arunachal, where all the topo sheets are restricted in nature. Very difficult to get topo sheet earlier. We used to get from satellite data and generate the DEM. Now from GeoSadak, the biggest advantage that from GeoSadak we can import the data, import the file to our software where we design the roads, number one. Number second, the GeoSadak also should have the latest satellite data with the resolution of 50 centimeter less than that, so that hill areas, complex hilly terrain, you can betterly design the roads. And then number third is that when we have the Z coordinate, that Z coordinate will help properly for the strategic road. When we are designing a road to border areas, we also want that this should touch to the habitation. So that will greatly help. Yes, so in my experience that Google, what Z value is not very correct. But so what Z value we will correct also, but that will probably quite help us. So these are my some suggestions. Thank you.
Yes, sir, definitely. And if one of our partners with which we are doing the MAU, if you have access to the DEM files, and we can additionally add more information on the data which we have. And I think the whole idea of this collaboration is that we'll be able to add more metadata to the data which we've released. So if you have DEM files which are available with you, we can try it for certain areas in Arunachal Pradesh and see whether we're able to add the Z values as well and other information. I think even just showing the topography in GeoSadak will help us do better planning audits for the hilly areas, which are now due and are coming for sanctions. There was one question from the online webinar, which I'll take. Actually, yeah. The website URL, I will put it in the chat if Rakshit or Tejas, can you put the website URL on the chat? Is it impossible for you? Is it possible for a team to link? Yeah, so I think the next step is to link this data with the LGD codes, there's already a conversation happening within the ministry of this. So LGD codes stop at the village level, and we are at the habitation level, which is a unit below it. And we were talking with Vishnu Chandra sir, who was from NIC, that if we have the boundaries of the LGD panchayats or villages, whether we can do a spatial join with the habitations which we have now and add that information to the habitations. But if any of our partners also have LGD coded boundaries, or if they have revenue village boundaries also, we can start with it. But I think that's what we hope to do in the upcoming time, that to link these habitations with the LGD codes as well, because right now there's only villages at the LGD level. We don't have anything below it. The link of the website has been posted in the chat. There was another question before that, what is the definition of habitation? They had missed it. So we'll be putting the presentation, the technical presentations on the website along with the PPT, so you can download them. But in short, you can get the answer if you go through the PMGSY operation manuals. They give a lot of context on how the rural road plan was collected and all the habitations were collected, because that forms the base of the data sets which have been created. Oh, and just the last question on what license this data is and what all is permitted out of this data set. So the data set is being released under the open data license, which has been released by the government of India, which is largely a very liberal license. And so you can look at the license, what all is permitted out of it, but it's largely very liberal. But at the same time, whenever you're downloading the data or using the data, you're still guided by the geospatial guidelines, which were released in Feb as of now. So it also dictates some of the permitted, non-permitted uses of spatial data. The spatial guidelines, February, and if any other policy which comes in place to replace that, will be guided by the same. So I don't think there are any more questions. So as we come to an end, it'll be my pleasure to invite Shri Pradeep Agrawal, Director, P1 Division, NRIDA, to grace the closure of today's event with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Harsh. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. It's an honor to me to get the opportunity to thank all the dignitaries and the participants attending the conference in person and also through VC. I'm happy to announce that all over India, from all the states, more than 500 participants have participated in the online mode at various points of time. So the information, whatever we discussed here, has been shared throughout the India and for the benefit of all. On behalf of the National Rural Infrastructure Development Agency, NRIDA, Ministry of Rural Development, I extend my sincere gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest of today, Shri Gsy3 Ji, Honorable Minister of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion. Thank you, sir, for inspiring and encouraging us with your words of wisdom and presence on this special day. We all present here taken note of his vision, and it will be a guiding factor to all of us in the NRIDA, as we have been learning from him all the time and have been implementing it. Our special thanks is due to our guest of honors, Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti Ji, Honorable Minister of State Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution and Rural Development, and Honorable Shri Fagan Singh Kulaste, Honorable Minister of State, Steel and Rural Development, for providing immense support to make this conference successful. We recognize the need of keeping pace with rising expectations of various stakeholders involved in rural development and look forward to your guidance and support in all our upcoming endeavors. I extend my gratitude to Shri Nagendranath Sinha Ji, our Secretary, MORD, who graced us with his presence and guidance. Thank you, sir, for sharing with us your words of wisdom and ideas. For an organization like NRIDA to successfully undertake high-quality research and disseminate in the events such as this has been due to your encouragement, guidance, and vision to all of us. And we are very thankful. We have been very fortunate to be guided by Dr. Ashish Kumar Goyal, Additional Secretary, MORD and DG NRIDA. The whole idea of releasing the huge data available with the NRIDA in public domain was initiated by you, sir, with a firm belief that it will be used in public interest by one and all. And we are successful, I think, in this mission to a great extent, or to full extent what we expected. It was truly impossible without your motivation, sir. We assure you that under your able guidance and leadership, we'll achieve new frontiers of success and more such laurels. I would like to express deep appreciation for the overwhelming response from the state government and union territories administration to this conference. They successfully participated, and they, as we have seen, that they collaborated with us, and it is all their efforts in a very short period of time where all this data has been created. All the state officials involved in the PMJSY scheme have put in tremendous effort in collecting and capturing the rural connectivity GIS data that is released today in the public domain. And to the delegates and the speakers of webinar, I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar and in this conference for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. The precious expertise and knowledge shared during the technical session by ESRI India, MapMy India, Data Meet, Gati Shakti, CDAC Pune, and our own ICT revision of the NRIDA will definitely help all of us in our upcoming projects. An event of this dimension can't happen overnight and needs meticulous planning and execution and an eye for detail. And let me tell you, for this, the entire credit goes to Dr. Ashish Kumar Goyal, the Additional Secretary and the DG NRIDA, who went into the minutest detail, and we were all making all our efforts. Probably we might have achieved to his vision of conducting this event. I'm not very sure, but we tried our best, sir, with your guidance. So lastly, I must thank the NRIDA team and the MORD for working hard for the past few days. Each one of us at the NRIDA and the MORD has worked for this event to make it a success and to make this webinar successful. Thank you, everyone, once again, making it a great success. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So I think now we call it a close of the day. Thank you so much for coming. Nice cup of tea. Please join with us. Thank you.
नीचे वाला नीचे वाला नीचे वाला देख ले, अगर तेरा गाड़ी में कॉपी नहीं लगा ना, रिकॉर्डिंग दबा दी।